Let's get started. Or not. Jimmy! Welcome back. I'm Winter, and it's been too long. No, not since the last time you watched me, though thanks for fixing that. No, hopefully not since the last time you played StarCraft 2. Though, to be more realistic, watched. No. It's been too long since the last time we delved into the depths of the StarCraft 2 leagues. The densely packed darkness, filled with tenacious Terrans, bold Protoss, and relentless Zergs, all climbing and clawing and shooting and charging and dropping and nuking their way up the ladder in order to achieve whatever scrap of glory they're looking for, or at least throw it in the face of Kevin on Discord, who got Diamond in Wings of Liberty and has been coasting off that accomplishment for 10 years. No, an accomplishment is not Diamond 10 years ago. An accomplishment is getting a little bit better today. 2 years ago, I attempted to show with the low APM challenge that working smarter and not harder is the most efficient way to improve. That with just a relatively small time commitment, but a medium brain commitment, you can improve at the most difficult 1v1 game in the world. I think I succeeded at that. But, as always, with StarCraft 2 and in general, you can do a little bit better. So I'd like to introduce the 2022 Low APM Challenge. In combination with SC2 replay stats, I will be, over the next weeks and months, and however long it takes, showing you, as each race individually, Terran, Zerg, and Protoss, as opposed to allowing the random gods to dictate our fates, how to get a little bit better. I will once again attempt to climb the ranks, working smarter and not harder. And over the last 2 years, not too much has changed in StarCraft 2. No huge balance patches. The maps are similar. The player count as well. So, while the best time to start was with Kevin back in Wings of Liberty, the second best time to restart or start StarCraft 2 is today. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing more difficult or satisfying in gaming. It's honestly less of a game and more of a lifestyle. I've made it mine for 12 years now, and hopefully you've enjoyed sharing it with me. So hopefully you enjoy the Low APM Challenge number 2 in 2022, and hopefully it makes many of your days and your games a little bit better. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the other side. Good luck. Have fun. Stay tuned. So you want to play Zerg as the antagonist throughout StarCraft history, the numerous Zerg led by a myriad version of mentally unstable commanders with questionable motivations and methods. You yourself may have questioned your own mental stability and methods in the past. So here we are with the odd race out. Something significantly different than both your average RTS and even the other two in StarCraft 2. So with that said, our plan as we move up the ladder will be not so much on a rigid build order we can just copy paste or queue up. It will not be so much about exactly when to build things and what benchmarks to hit, but instead preparing for the many options of the less flexible races. Understanding a bunch of unique mechanics, queens, and everything about them. creep, larva, all the bad habits and good ones you can create, and how to exploit the innate fear that especially Terran Protoss and other Zergs do have of Zerg themselves. Congratulations on joining the relatively few, the proud, and the Zerg, as Zerg is the least represented race in the lower leagues. Bronze, silver, and gold have significantly less. In bronze, it's about 25% Zerg to 45%. Is it 25%? Or we'll have to check that. Jimmy, check the numbers again. Make up some good numbers for us. It's definitely more Terrans, though. It's obviously more Terrans. You know that. Everyone knows that. You probably started with Terran, and then, like me, you realized your true calling. The Zerg. My friends and tournaments all said Terran was overpowered, imbalanced back in Wings of Liberty, and it was. It was, actually. But that doesn't matter in the Silver League, because if you think Zerg is more fun, then I might agree with you. So, in these first few episodes and first games, we're going to be going over all those unique mechanics. We're going to have basic scouting, overlords, and drones. Yes, all these simple things. And one thing, before we get any further, I'm going to tell you queens. All right, queens. One more time. It's queens. Yes. You can't use... They don't work on the select all army hotkey. That is a concern. But we're going to figure that one out. Queens. So. Let's jump in and go over the basics. Once again, instead of relying on the hotkey schemes of the Terran and Protoss, I'm gonna go through the hotkeys real quick again. You know what? I think a better system. As we go on, Zerg gets the benefit of this being the third of the three races. I have a better idea of what I want to talk about here, so hopefully you enjoy that. First off, settings. As for graphics, if you are struggling, like a lot of top-tier players will play on what is lovingly called potato graphics. This is essentially everything on low. There are some versions of this called hybrid that you can look up. I haven't really used, but textures and models and everything else on low are your generic potato graphics. I have everything not on that, and I find no issues with playing, and it looks good. I like when the things explode to banelings and all that. So that's why, of course, we have physics on extreme. But your big things you can turn down are shadows, as always, and reflections. Be careful with turning down anything more, because your creep will look very ugly, by the way. The specific concern for Zerg is some of these will make your creep look horrible. If that's what you're into, just know it's only you seeing it, not your opponent. So, as for sound, you've got all your options. Response sound, some people want. This is all dealer's choice. Mouse and keyboard. Mouse sensitivity. Day 9 once said that having it on 51% is better than 50%. And I don't know if that's still true, but here we are. When it comes to scroll speed, the default is 20%, which is not remotely high enough. You can really see, you might notice yourself struggling to move around, like either moving your mouse to the edge of the screen, or using the drag scroll option. More on that soon. So I like to have a nice number for mine, several times that of the default 20%. And now the big one, the gameplay options, the alerts on the left side, the build grid, always good, always show worker status, no reason not to. Unchecking enable simple command card, because that is hiding hold position and a bunch of other options that are pretty important to know. It doesn't keep you from activating hold position or other options. It just kind of hides them so you don't get scared and confused. But you're already playing Zerg, so that's the default state. Show current order is obviously good. Select all larva. I usually like to have, it's just simpler. Enabling enemy unit selection is exactly what it sounds like. It's actually disabled by default. Display XP points is This is dealer's choice. This is your preference, but I like it because it's a little easier to see how much you killed, and the animation stays around a little later. Unit life bars, always or damaged. I've got them around to damaged. The only thing to consider is when a unit is full on energy, it no longer has an energy bar because it's technically full. Control groups, I would recommend if you find yourself accidentally clicking them, put them on unclickable. And show flyer helper should always be on. This is so you can land those corrosive biles and, well, mostly corrosive bile, but things like fungals. A lot of players without flyer helper will aim them at the target as opposed to where the target is relative to the ground. It's not too far off usually, but with like corrosive bile, you can't really afford to miss. So now, colors, I like additional team colors, and I turn them up to 11 because it looks pretty. Very important here. By default is auto join play mode, which means general chat is enabled by default. This is where you turn that off. Or you just leave it on and then complain and feel intellectually superior to general chat, which is a very low bar, but I'm glad you could clear it. This is mostly for North America, where from the beautiful Americas, we have anywhere from the central United States to Singapore. You can set a preferred server. This doesn't guarantee you'll get this server, but if, for example, another player's on best match, which is the default, and you're on central US, it will pick central US. So it'll increase the amount of games with lower ping. Just know it doesn't guarantee it. Europe only has one server, whereas Asia has a couple options, but not anything nearly as widespread. And one more thing, displaying game tooltips and replay time info. I like the default interface for actually looking at my games. I have, of course, your fancy observer interfaces. You can Google those if you're interested in those, but overall, SC2 replay stats plus the default interface is perfectly good for getting that info. And now, moving our way down to hotkeys. So, not too many Zerg specific ones, but I'm just going to run through the basic options yet again. I keep saying yet again, but you might be here on the first episode. I got to remember this. I do this. Since we do it live every day, I forget that not everyone is here all the time watching 12 hours. So if I miss something or I gloss over it that you think I shouldn't have, make sure to leave a comment, ask a question, stuff like that. And in further episodes, I will be collecting especially race-specific comments and questions so I can answer them for those of you who might not be vampires and be watching streams all night because they can't sleep and want to pretend they're not alone. So with Create Location 1, I like Control F2. So the reason it's not F1 is because that's the idle worker key. And Control F1 selects all idle workers. It's probably the least relevant for Zerg, but you still get idle workers as Zerg. We've all misclicked before. And the reason I do Control F2 instead of Shift F2 is because when I started playing SC2, my first keyboard, it muted all sound on my computer if I hit Shift F2, and I couldn't figure out how to fix that, so I just used Control F2. But I think Shift F2 is perfectly fine as well. Or whatever you prefer. But honestly, camera locations are the most relevant for Zerg, as camera locations for injecting your hatcheries with your beautiful queens is very important. I will also put base camera on spacebar, and we will go over how to use that as an option, but I prefer camera location injects personally, but there are multiple methods. And I'll be honest, I don't find myself using more. I've tried to use more than 4, but there's only so many keys on the keyboard and so many neurons in the brain, so F2 through F5 is usually what I stick with. Alright. Unit management. So I did overwrite the select all army units, didn't I? Well, I like to put that on the tilde key next to the left of the 1 key. While we're going to try to avoid using the select all army key for its actual purpose, in general, the best option... Okay, let me refresh my brain there. The select all army key is very good for selecting spellcasters or units that probably should be on their own, like Mutalisks or Vipers. And it does not cover Queens, but more on that soon. And then choose AI or ability target. This is for rapid fire keys, rapid fire hotkeys. Essentially, it means when you hold this key down, then it will, at the repeat rate of your keyboard, activate that ability or hit that key. So this is how you do the corrosive bile, and it's also good for creep tumors by default. You can add more rapid fire hotkeys with the with an ini file. You can actually just go to Notepad and edit it to have more than just these two, because this is a modern game where you can, edit your hotkeys pretty extensively. But just C to start is your basic one. And one last thing for camera, actually. Drag scroll, I like to put on the side mouse button. This is just for casting, observing. I got used to this. And I find it more convenient than clicking middle mouse, but that's all personal preference there. And now, Zerg specific. Now, while this isn't Zerg specific, it's all unit specific. But rebinding the patrol key. Yes, the patrol key. It sounds like a very niche and little used hotkey in a modern RTS, obviously, but it is definitely an important one. And I like it on Q. Patrol on P is very Brood War. Like, probe should be on P because it starts with P. Hit or miss with Brood War. Only a few more, actually, for Zerg. So what I like, pretty much my philosophy... Now, I actually didn't touch on this, but grid hotkeys are fine, good. I think grid's fine. If that's what you're into, it's probably easier, to be honest. So, overall, I think if you're using grid hotkeys, ain't nothing wrong with that. But I started out without grid, and I fear change, so layer F is what I use. Because making sure you get that layer at a time, you're only going to click it once, but still, just being able to slap it down a little easier. There you go. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I switch. Honestly, for Zerg, everything else is pretty convenient. Oh yeah, I like to put Overlord speed on C as well. Same idea. Not quite the grid keys. And yeah, I'm thinking through. Really, one thing to consider in this, if you're just coming back, you might not realize. But now there are individual burrow and unburrow keys. This was changed several years ago, added rather. You can choose to just have them both on the same key, and it will just toggle them between burrow and unburrow. But this, back in my day, we didn't have the select all army hotkey, and burrow was just one key. So you had to select the things you were burrowed, because if you just pressed the button, then half your shit would unburrow, and the other half would burrow again. And that was really annoying. So obviously that's kind of convenient, but something to point out. All right. And with all that said, let's before we start, one last thing. The requirements. Now, these are all taken, as I've said. Every single one for all three races has been taken from SC2 replay stats, over 3 million games last year, and I've chosen an APM that is at least 10 lower than the average. I was actually very surprised to see how much higher Zerg? Because in the old low APM challenge, I put Zerg at 20 APM higher than Terran and Protoss. But you got to think about how Zerg works. Just building a single set of Zerglings is 3 actions. You select a hatchery, you select a larva, and then you build the Zerglings. So, and since you're just in general more likely to be building more units because, you know, you're Zerg, that does kind of somewhat artificially inflate the actions to do the same amount. So we will be a little higher up than your average Terran and Protoss. Maybe because Zerg is harder. I don't know. Make your opinions. Last thing. Map vetoes. Blackburn, Beckett Industries, and Pride of Eltars right now are your 3 maps that don't fit in. They're the outsiders. With Zerg especially, almost as much as Protoss, you do have to care about the map layout because of how overlords work. And just creep in general. Having a different map layout means a different way to send out your overlords. A different way to expand. And that is adding more variables than we need. So, instead of doing that, we're just going to veto those maps. The rest are your relatively standard layout where you expand toward and to the sides your opponent. As you see, they're hardwire, glittering ashes, curious minds. No, wait, it's up here. Same idea, though. Just rotate it. Berlingrad, 2,000 atmospheres. And now, we start. While we're waiting for that first match, the Queen. So, I've already talked about how important queens are, but a lot of newer players are wondering what the counters are. Zerg doesn't have as many big aggressive options as Protoss or Terran. Like, you're not going to have a battle cruiser or a void ray. On the bright side, the counter of both those units is queens. Like Scarlett said when I was playing against her on my possibly ill-conceived balance patch, I asked about why don't Zerg scout with Overlord speed more often? And Scarlett explained, so we'd waste money on Overlord speed to see that we still need to build more queens, is my paraphrased version of it. But essentially, it's Terran and Protoss exist, build more queens. That is the flowchart. As most of the non-ground-based things you could be threatened by are countered by those queens. All right. He's got a platinum border.
You got this.
And his name is Hello World. So we'll see. First things first, though. Control 3 on the Overlord. I'm going to put it on the Pervert Pillar on the other side. Thank you, Pig, for that name. The hatchery on Control 4. So the general hotkey layout will be hatchery on 4, army on 1, queens on 2, and then any specialty units on 3. In this case, that means having my first Overlord. But since we're trying to keep it consistent, just the first Overlord being sent out. So, at 50 seconds, I'm going to send a drone. Well, not 50 seconds. I think we can rally drones out. I'll get that done next game. But we're going for a hatchery. The build is 17, 17, 17. So, very sad or amazing for Zerg. Whenever a drone builds something, that drone no longer exists. Your supply goes down by 1. So when I say 17, 17, 17, that doesn't mean hatchery, gas, pool. That means hatchery drone, gas drone, pool, and then more drones. So, something to consider. Now, is it a promotion or punishment for the drone who gets built? Like, now you're just a building for the rest of your life. So, hotkey the hatcheries together. So, I'm going to put my second Overlord just out front of my base. I'm not going to send it across the map. My third Overlord, we're going to build... I was supposed to build it on 20. But here is the general scheme. Now, as we get higher up in the leagues, we're going to get more specific. Every matchup, technically, you should have a different Overlord placement. But I think just starting out, having one set is better. So the first Overlord to their base. The second Overlord protects yours. The third Overlord to the third. And the fourth Overlord to the fourth. That way, or generally around it. He's got a Reaper. I'm going to start Zergling speed. Though, this might be the only game I get Zergling speed, as I kind of defaulted, I'll be honest, to my normal Zerg versus Terran build, and I don't think we're going to continually do that. Instead of making more Zerglings... Oh, well, we got a queen done here. So I'm using camera locations right now. I double tap the 4 key to recenter. I control F3 to set up camera locations. And now, just select and then V-click. Important to note that you can queue up injects. This is something you could not do in Wings of Liberty. But when you inject again, when there's already an inject, it essentially queues up another one. I'm not sure what the limit is. It's at least 5. Usually you don't want more than that. So I'm making a Roach Warren here. After I start my second 2 queens. After these injects, I'm going to put the queens on the 2 key. So, if this is your first time watching as well, important to note, I'm not going to explain every part of every build all the time. Essentially, the idea is over time you get an idea of, like, I'm not trying to spoon feed. I'm essentially just throwing you in a shower of knowledge and letting it rain down on you and hoping that some of it sinks in. He's got some Hellions in my base, which is annoying, but that's why we have the queens. Now, this is very important. I think if nothing else, no matter how many drones or whatever you lose, queens on 2. All right? That's my queen key. That's all my non-house queens. Each hatchery has its own queen servant. Or maybe the hatchery is serving the queen. I don't know. Whatever narrative you like. But, so, that is for injects. That's just for having basic defense. But that is its job. But then the rest of the queens you build, and this is straight from Serral, who has his select all queens key. Oh. So from now on, remember, 420 spores. Terran and Protoss, 420 spores. Liberators here, but that's why we had the Overlord out there for this kind of scenario.
Brood under attack. Panic time.
Liberators are very annoying, but this is why we build the spores at 420. 420, that's the number about getting high. High ground, which is when air units can very much come out from, especially Terran and Protoss. And if you build those spores at 420... Now, I'll tell you right now, you higher level players are like, but they could have an Oracle or a Liberator faster. Yes, technically, you could have air units coming toward your base around the 4-minute mark if their builds are on point. But if their builds are on point, they probably are not or do not deserve to be in the bronze, silver, or gold leagues. That is just how it is. So, I'm going to get 1-1.
Your brood is under attack.
Spore 20 raise it. I kind of like that. Oh, he got a Viking. So this guy is very likely not a bronze leaguer. Well, it literally said his portrait was platinum, which is... I'm getting the vibe of a pretty solid player. I finished my lair here. We'll talk about lair timings going forward. We're going to do... what we lovingly call and probably not family-friendly, the unenthusiastic handjob build, which is Roach Hydra. Probably not family-friendly. Okay, I don't know. What videos are you watching? Oh my god. Anyways, it's not exciting. It's not flashy. But it is the lowest hanging fruit here of Zerg. And it is the easiest army to control that still gives you options against most enemy unit compositions. I'll talk about creep spread as well afterwards. There's so many little things. I'm gonna try to focus more on one thing per game. But if you have questions, I'll try to answer in between. So I actually screwed up my own build here. Ooh, he's got some tanks.
The enemy is attacking your
I'm going to hotkey some of these in. And, well, looks like we're not getting that 1-1 this game. We may have just lost. So the kind of the lifestyle of a Zerg player, especially starting out, is dying horribly. Zerg, it's Zerg's place. And this is, fun fact, when I first switched from Terran to Zerg, I was in the Diamond League with Terran. A couple months into Wings of Liberty. I got demoted. Yeah, back in my day, you could get demoted. This is a learning experience. You could get demoted. I got demoted to Platinum because it's such a different method. It's such a different style. You essentially need to be as greedy as possible, and then at the last possible second, right before the enemy's there, you slam the door shut in their face. That's how you play the more macro Zerg style. In Legacy of the Void, it's not quite as pronounced. You can definitely be more aggressive. But the same principles apply. Where Zerg players, it's on them to defend and then kind of explode their production. Achievement awarded. And that was right on the edge of our Bronze League APM. I thought it was a nice number. Yeah. So that was a bit more of a Platinum game. That Terran, more of a Platinum player. In fact, had more APM than we plan on for Diamond. But that is not the point. I think that was a decent learning experience. But unfortunately, I'll tell you this right now. I'm going to keep telling you stories, because Zerg was the race that I learned how to play StarCraft with the most. Like Terran, I learned to build. When I started out with Terran, because everybody told me Terran was imbalanced, Terran's super good, and they were right once again. It got nerfed a bunch of times. I copy-pasted a build, and I found success with that. But I did not learn how to play, and that's why I immediately got demoted. Well, not immediately, but I quickly got demoted from Diamond to Platinum when I started playing Zerg, because then I had to learn how the game actually worked, instead of just copy-pasting a build order. I actually, there was on Team Liquid a 30-something page Zerg macro guide. I don't know if it's still there. It probably is. Team Liquid is older than StarCraft 2. But, and because I would bring that to when the classes I wasn't sleeping through, I printed out a 30-something page Zerg macro guide, because this was before live streams were really a thing, before YouTube was really a thing. I mean, it was a thing. But back in my day, Twitch didn't exist. It's because of StarCraft 2 that Twitch exists. It's a big part. It's been credited by Twitch. So, yeah, back in my day, we had to print things out on a printer, which hates humanity almost as much as the Zerg do. And learn all these things. And that's where I learned, like, all the options between injects and all that. But, yeah, Zerg hasn't changed very much stylistically. It's just easier to have a well-rounded build than it was in Wings of Liberty. Wasn't the limit 60? No, as we saw before the game. Well, I have been flexible on the limits against, obviously, very clearly not bronze players, but against what looks to be a solid silver Protoss. So, not to stereotype,
Remember,
but
panic.
when you see a
maybe a
Kaczynski
little
portrait, I don't want to tell people how to see Smurfs, but the Kaczynski portrait is the starter portrait. If you have a platinum border and a starter portrait and a name like Hello World, I'm going to go ahead and assume you're probably not playing your third game ever. So. And then, depending on your other comments, I might assume other things. All right, so first Overlord to their base. Second Overlord to my second. And then, at 50 seconds, go take an expansion. Well, maybe we'll try some pool first builds. This is kind of a... Get off my... Protoss players are not very nice. We don't like Protoss players. Don't tell me playing Protoss I said that. Alright. So this is something that's important to get used to. A lot of the times, even at the lower levels, players will see... Because every single pro game involves blocking the base, you can't be afraid to take your third. Alright? Don't panic. I'm going to say right now, we're going to start doing a pool first every game. We're going to do 17 pool. And then 17 hatch, and then 17 gas. And I know this was not the perfect execution of it, but that's okay. More than even Terran or Protoss, Zerg is very much about the idea of a game plan. I don't say that like a derogatory comment. But instead I say that about... That's what I love about Zerg. It's more of a... It's a big picture sort of race. Like... Are you insulting my weight? Says Brenda. Well, a little. Partially because queens are so thick and cannot fly. That is part of why. You don't have too many options to attack that don't involve slowly and angrily walking across the map. Speaking of angrily, is that a... Okay, so, you see that cannon? Yes. Here's what we're gonna do. Ignore it. He's now spent 350 minerals on this. So, I am simply going to move on with my life. It is only one cannon. That's the most annoying amount. Here, let's be very careful. I'm making 8 more lings. Alright? Just 8. Not more. And I'm not getting Zergling speed. Another important point. We're going to deliberately avoid Zergling speed. Because making Zerglings is the most important resource, I think, for newer players, besides this guide series, is larva. That's the thing a lot of players do not really respect. In general, I find. Just larva. Another thing that's important to note is to not be intimidated by a cannon. Cannons don't do that much damage. 12 lings is easily enough to kill a pylon and a cannon. A lot of players will see a single cannon and make lings until that cannon is dead. Which takes a bit, because you do have to make the Zergling. But you see here, with just 12 lings and a queen, we're able to deal with that. If there was 2 cannons, it kind of depends on the positioning, to be honest. And that's another reason. Like, I'm just going to spend this entire time saying Zerg is hard. It is. It is. It takes a lot more actual, like, game knowledge than, especially Terran, but also Protoss, because playing defense is harder than playing off. Like, the sword was very likely developed before the shield. All right. Most of history has been finding ways to defend against new attacks, as opposed to the other way around. So, I maybe it sounds profound, and that's the important part. Getting those injects. I've now got a couple queens. We're gonna spread the creep. So here's another thing I like to do. I think the tip that some players, I really wish I remembered who it was so I can give more credit. But so looking at the minimap, when and why do I look at the minimap? How do I train myself to do so? So the tip, remember Spore 20. Transfuse. Important to note, Transfuse a couple of years ago, for those of you just coming back, Transfuse was changed to be 75 HP and then 50 over time.
Did you build it all in the main?
It is no longer 125 instantaneously. This was a slight nerf because people were making so many queens. So you don't want to just spam Transfuse necessarily. It's not a big deal, really, but it is something that is slightly different than it was. I missed my Spore 20, though. And thus, the Oracle is dangerous. Though, having those queens gives you kind of the point defense.
Mineral patch is gone, and it's not coming back.
So the goal is going to be 66 drones. Yeah, even more than Terran of Protoss. Most of Zerg and most of this series will be eventually filling in the gaps in the play. You're going to notice a lot of things I'm not talking about because it's impossible to talk about each little thing without being impossible to follow. But filling in a new thing every couple games, like focusing a little more on creep spread or on, you know, spending some of your 2,000 minerals would be good. But on the bright side, though, I have 2,000 minerals. So on the downside, I might not for long. So only because I just wasted all my larvae here. We're going to shift, queue some injects, make some roaches. We'll talk about gas timings after this. We'll see if I can defend this attack. Or if I've been too greedy yet again. It looks like it might be the second thing.
Brood under attack. Panic time.
Though this is a surprisingly and dangerously competent. Oh, we're gonna have to really buckle down on this Zerg series. There's a reason why Zerg is heavily underrepresented in the meta leagues. And that reason may very well be another reason why the sword was developed before the shield. I got too greedy. I have a bunch of money in the bank and no units. So now we die.
Mutation done.
What a different vibe we're gonna have here. And we went over the APM. Though it does seem he's more of a platinum player. I'm like, charge after a cannon rush at 7 minutes. So to be honest, it might be the system still figuring out. So this I think we're getting, honestly, it's like the lottery here with placement matches. I'm actually on the receiving end of what I've described right now. It's how sometimes your placement matches just put you up against people who are going to crush you. And you got to go 20, 25 games until the system's pretty confident you're as terrible as you think you are. So, what did we learn there? 1, build units. A big focus of the next game will be staying under 1,000 minerals. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to get 50 drones. We're going to build 50 army supply. We'll go to 66 drones, and then we'll max out. That's the plan. But to the people, yes. So, to be honest, like, I am the expert these are platinum players. This is like I'm playing like a silver or gold against platinum. But still a learning experience and what you can expect to be facing and why it's so important to kind of lock down your early game. Yeah. And I want to reiterate, you are not done with your placement matches. If you truly feel like you're just getting crushed every game and your rank doesn't reflect where you are, play 25 games and then redo your placements. I'll show you. I can show you with. Let's see, with this button. Leave league. After 25 games, you can leave league. Your MMR will stay the same, but I would recommend that. It just the ranking system for StarCraft 2. Honestly, in StarCraft 2, the entire game is designed to make you hate playing StarCraft 2. That's the beauty of StarCraft 2. So, what has happened in the last few years? What's happened is, did you know that the average MMR has gone down? In other games, there's an issue, like Dota, where MMR gets inflated slowly over time. Like, it just keeps going up and up. But, because overall in StarCraft 2, the average Diamond MMR and Grandmaster MMR have gone down. So what that means, if you haven't played in 3 years, you come back, you drop 200 MMR, you may actually be higher up than you were 2 years ago. But it's not going to feel like that. Like, people are not getting worse. It's just more competitive. There's less of a floor to it. I can't actually explain to you exactly why that is. Overall. And it doesn't seem to have anything to do, because the player count is similar. Now, the largest number of players was actually when everyone was stuck inside doing nothing but playing video games. This is not unique to StarCraft. But instead of just saying these things, here you go. Here's the amount of games played on average every day in StarCraft. So when the game went free to play, about 200,000 games a day. 200 to 215 or so. And then there was some rough times. Also, there's been some times when the API, the information, was not available. And then the first season, after everyone was locked inside, actually was the peak of StarCraft 2. But today, we're at around 180, so slightly less, but only marginally so, under when the game went. Honestly, it's trending back upwards. There hasn't been a balance patch since around here. So I think what's happening overall is just no one ever leaves StarCraft, okay? There have been some new RTS titles recently, but I think a lot of what they've done has made people realize StarCraft 2 still exists and is still the premier real-time strategy game. And they want to be reminded of how much they suck at it. So at least they're playing a few games to figure that out. But yeah, welcome back. If I just described you. Alright, what are we up against? We got a Zerg. So, Zerg is slightly different, though I'm not going to change much. It's still going to be the first Overlord goes in front. But against Zerg, do not put it on the Pervert Pillar. You just put it in front. The only thing that can kill Overlords early are Queens. And Queens get joint pain off a creep. So as long as it's a little bit further out where you can still see if Zerglings are coming out, then that's far enough. I'm going to get the gas. And now I'm going to go get the hatchery. Just putting this OV right out there. So, here's something that I I used to, when I switched to Zerg, I assumed you needed to use these hotkeys for rally points. So G is the worker rally point, and Y is the army rally point. It was, I do actually think it was Twitch chat that pointed out, why don't you just right-click? Somehow, I never knew. If you right-click, it sets your army rally, and if you click on resources, it sets your workers. So you don't need to click those keys. I'll still do it occasionally out of reflex, but it's just, it's context sensitive, I guess, or some other fancy sounding thing. Like, depending on where you click, it sets different rally points. All right, my third OV goes to the third. I'm going to shift click. You can rally units. This is the advantage that Zerg has over the other races as well. They can rally specific units to specific locations. Let's get this OV. Does he have an expansion? That's all I want to know. Yes. So now we just sit back here. I did it again. You see? I'm still struggling with that reflex. Against Zerg, as soon as my expansion finishes, I'm going to build a Roach one. We're going to learn how to wall off as Zerg in the Silver League. Right now, the first instinct, though, will be we're going to build some Roaches. Because you know what Zerg players are going to do? Unless they're watching this or many of the other Bronze to Masters guides. And then they'll build Roaches as well. And then we're on even footing. So. But there's a reason why most of the lesson plan for Zerg is mechanics. Because just wrangling, like, right now, I'm struggling to keep up with the injects. Creep spread against Zerg. Okay, now this is important. Control 1 on these eggs. I control-click the eggs that I made into Roaches. I have Control 1, and now I already have them on my key. So this way, this is another way. It's actually an advantage over the Select All Army key in that way. Because right now, you can have your army already on a hotkey before it is even born. So we're gonna go to, I have a few Roaches here. I'm getting a lair, usually between 4 and 5 minutes. Against Zerg, we're gonna be sitting on 2 bases a little longer. I'm actually gonna show you, and don't be afraid of doing this if there are a bunch of Zerglings. There's a few Zerglings coming out, so let's do that now. We're going to wall off with a queen. This is the wrong spot. If you watch the Protoss guide, but yeah, the same principles apply as with Protoss walls. You can put a queen in there. So the actual pro gamer way to do it is to build a spine crawler. So that way, you have a building that you can burrow and unburrow and don't have to rely on a unit on hold position, though I don't think that's super necessary. Come on in. Gonna get +1 attack. Focus on my gas geysers. So essentially the goal is to get 44 drones, which is full 2-base saturation. Though you can go up to 24 workers on a base. I'm gonna say this every time. It really should have yellow and then red. Like, you see how it goes red at 17? You're still getting more mining. It's just between 17 and 24, essentially 3 instead of 2 per patch. It gets less and less efficient. Because a drone essentially steps in when the other drones leave to take the first drone's spot. But there is still some idle time on the drones, is the summary. It is better to have a max of 16 on every hatchery, but until you get to 24 workers, it is not better to be long distance mining. I think that's a big misconception. A lot of players will see red and be like, oh my god, it's red. That's very bad. Another thing that, especially if you played Wings of Liberty, you might not realize, is from 0 to 16 drones, it's all the same. You're getting plus 100% mining on each drone from 0 to 16. There is no benefit besides not mining out a base as quick for transferring workers earlier. So there is no, you should not be transferring half your workers from your main to your natural. It's a waste of time and makes them more vulnerable most of the time. So just something to point out. Did I ever get roach speed? No, I was too busy slowly explaining how workers work. And once again, this is going to keep happening. Here's something we're going to do.
Yeah.
Every time I spend all my larvae and I still have 1,000 minerals, I'm going to make a hatchery. And I'm not going to make it. I'm making it in the main. I want the full brood war. Until you can spend your gosh darn minerals, okay, you're going to make these mother-loving hatcheries. Okay? You fuck. I felt like we had to balance it out a little. There, more hatcheries, more larvae. Like I said, the most important resource, larvae. Not minerals, not gas. But Zerg has 3 key resources to manage in the early game. On top of all the other housekeeping and macro mechanics, Zerg has 3 resources. And larva is something a lot of players really like. The difference, if you're wondering what the difference between, like, I don't know, Dark and Ragnarok is, it's the details on larva management. So each hatchery grows larva about every, I believe it's 11 seconds in real time. Each hatchery grows its own organic free trade larva. Whenever there isn't 3 larvae on a hatchery, every 11 seconds a new larva will pop up. So if you have 3 naturally grown larvae, well then guess what? You're wasting time. You're wasting potential time to get more larvae. On top of injects, you can go up to 20 larvae max on a hatch, but you can never go over that 3 homegrown larvae. Ah, mutas, which is why we have the Hydra den. I'm gonna get Hydras here. Control Shift 1 into my roach control group. We're gonna get 2 spore crawlers. Important to note, you can build things in the mineral line. Ideally, if possible, aim for where there's more of a gap. But this isn't Brood War. Your workers are pretty smart. They will, without really skipping too many beats, go around. But usually I like to have some sort of layout like this. 1 to zone them out, and 1 to punish them if they commit. Now, as you start mining out, another thing is, I mean, the last time we did the low APM challenge was in Legacy of the Void, but honestly, according to the numbers, it's a lot of players. We're just going to bring this up in real time here. But a lot of the players are not playing for the first time. A lot of you guys are coming back. And actually playing more in general. Like, just playing more games on average. Though most of you aren't. Most of you aren't. So, this is more of a, all right, we'll give it another shot kind of situation, I think. So hopefully it's helpful. All right, we're maxed out. 1030. I only have 40 drowns. Oh my god. I'm just gifting a sub right now. This is literally, I failed one of the benchmarks of my own guide. I'm just, while we're doing it live, because 50 workers by 7 minutes. And then 8 minutes for Terran. That is the very basic benchmark that I want everyone to try to hit. Do we not have... No, that was a gift sub. Why does it show my name? I guess I get credit. Alright, so... Gonna start the Carapace upgrade. Here's an important thing. Before I attack, we're gonna inject all the hatcheries. Yes, she'll get around. This queen, full energy. Just shift click several times. It will queue up the inject, so at least there'll be more in the long run. I'm gonna start an infestation pit. So now I have 16 larvae queued up and counting. And, well, one more thing, just in case. Build some overseers, shift 1, and then I'm pretty confident here. Oh, wow, I've never noticed this. You see the indicator? I know, crazy seeing an indicator of where your units are going to move in a modern RTS. Overseers don't have an attack move. I've never noticed this because I've never looked at it this close, but that's super cool. It looks sick. The Christmas icon. Since Overseers can only right-click as opposed to a move, it's combined the attack and the right-click. It's very cool.
Your brood is under attack.
I never... I wonder... I don't think you can combine anything else, so you can't combine a patrol and a right-click command, but... How do you break a Terran with tanks on the high ground? Well, we'll go over that in a moment. So, getting 200 supply. The goal is going to be building this army to some extent as quickly as possible every game. Roaches and Hydras. The idea is to not die and then overwhelm. And, wait. Technically in bronze, we were aiming for 60. I will keep gifting subs because I do feel like I'm not covering as much as I want to cover here as Zerg. But overall, wait, did the SC2 replay stats come up? I am doing as little as possible while still covering the important points. But Zerg is hard. Like, it is a lot. And you don't need to do everything, but you do need to focus on some key things.
Good. Now I have your attention.
Winter
So,
gaming is now chilling.
You also started talking about ZVZ creep spread? Okay, so at this level, creep spread is probably the last of the major priorities. Creep spread helps your units move faster. It does not regenerate. Units regenerate on or off of creep at the same rate. And it does not provide vision. Creep tumors provide vision. But creep doesn't discriminate either. All Zerg units move faster on creep, some more than others.
One way or another.
The average amount is 30%, but obviously queens get a huge bonus. Every unit has its own unique number for a bonus. Creep spread in ZVZ is not a priority, but I would not actively avoid it. A lot of players are like, but then you're helping the enemy. Well, the idea is you're probably going to have more units, and the creep tumors give you vision. So it is important to have that. So I wouldn't worry about creep spreading, but just don't go out of your way. A lot of lower level players will creep spread, but the creep spread itself doesn't attack the enemy. It doesn't kill their units. It only allows you to move more quickly into doing that. So overall, creep spread is the last priority after spending your money and being unsupply block. These are all the same things. But overlords, injects, creep is let's put it another way. Oh, I see. Do you? Overlords, injects, creep. Oh, I see. Because they all are relevant. The idea is, when you do one of those things, you should think about the others. In that order. Making sure you have overlords, and they're in decent spots. You should inject to make sure you have larva. And then, if you can, you get creep. But overall, that's the priority. We're up against Terran. We're going to go to the Pervert Pillar. Most maps have it. A couple maps do not. In which case, The maps are specifically designed with Overlord placements, with Reaper jumps, stuff like that in mind. So maps have some specific layouts. For each race has its own specific mechanics. Like the size of the natural ramp is mostly so Protoss can wall off consistently. The pervert pillar right up here is mostly so Zergs have a place to scout, since they're usually the more defensive. And the Reaper jump is the same thing for Terrans. I mean, it can be used for other stuff, but overall, those are the basic layout of your standard map, and that's why we vetoed some of the other maps, are because it's less consistent on those things. Which isn't bad, it's just, it's already hard enough to be consistent with Zerg without throwing extra variables in. So, my first queen, run to the bold, is dropping a creep tumor between the main and the natural, and then going down, I went for the 17, 17, 17. Easy enough. I'm going to send my Zerglings into his base. I'm still injecting. Every queen I build, shift 2 against Terran here. This Overlord, okay, so this is my third OV. Should be at my third. Yes, we'll put it out there. There's a little pervert pillar there. And then, at 3:30, we're gonna build a Roach Run. That's the number for it here. We see his base. Alright, we move on with our lives. And then, by 4 minutes, a third. So, I want to be clear that this Roach timing, the 3:30 Roaches, this is literally just a placeholder. This is a timing to put it. Usually you'd like a Roach Run a little closer to when you actually want to build the Roaches, because a lot of the things with Zerg, besides Queens really, you don't want to build earlier than you need them. Queens are the only unit you kind of increment out, because they don't take larva, and they don't require any tech but a spawning pool. Oh. You guys hear that? It's Spore 20! We're gonna make sure now we move some of these Overlords out. And at 5 minutes, we're gonna build a lair and 2 Evo chambers. Alright, as this queen, I like building the lair at the natural, because 1, it's less likely to be scouted. 2, it's probably closer to where my army is, because it's my army's probably not going to be sitting in my main. And that's really all the reasons you need. But yeah, I like having the lair in the natural. Technically, a lair increases the survivability.
Is that all?
I just don't enjoy.
Chilling for 9 months, just appreciating my favorite streamers while the world goes to hell.
No, it's already been there. That's why we play StarCraft, to appreciate how even games can be painful. This Overlord gives me most of the information I need. I'm going up to... We're almost at 50 drones. So, I've got suddenly all these queens. We'll get out the third as well.
Evolution complete.
Get the upgrades. Get roach speed. Shift click off one drone. Oh yeah, here's the gas trick, I guess you could say. Here, oh my god, there's a Widow Mine drone. Ah! Widow Mines are horrible. And that's true. But I need to get back to gas. Right click, shift, holding shift. 1, 2, 3. And then. Now we're gonna build a Hydra Den as well. I'm gonna get a few more drones and Overlords, and now we're gonna build 50 supply of army. We're gonna include the queens though. Queens count as army supply even if they're not on the army key. Oh, no queen here. If I happen to be there, slap down that creep tumor. During the first break, which will be probably in a game or two, during the first break, I will explain injects and all the options for them. That will be our intermission. We'll be answering questions and learning a pretty in-depth macro tip for each race. I like that format, so that's what we'll be doing, just FYI. But right now, we're sticking with the camera locations, which I find to be very useful for all the races. This man. Now this is the Terran we've been waiting on. I think we're getting calibrated a little more accurately now. I've got 2,000 minerals again. More hatcheries.
Mutation finished. Yeah.
We now have 60 army supply. All right. Now we're going to go up to 70 drones. Going to rally my drones to the 3rd. Get more overlords. At this point, you essentially control-click overlords. I usually like to put them... Pretty much if I lose my natural, the game's probably over anyways, right? So, I don't worry too much. And there was a question that I was going to answer and I completely forgot about, was what if they have tanks on the high ground? Well, most of the outlying bases are not on the high ground. The general rule is you shouldn't attack into tanks on the high ground. If they're on 2 bases and you're on 6, well, guess who's going to run out of minerals first? Thank you, Agba. Take another hatchery. So, I already see the obvious... With this well-placed overlord, we're going to get an infestation pit. And now, this is not something I expect in bronze or even silver, but if you can learn it relatively early on, it will save you a lot of headaches, Loco, down the line. And that's Viper control. Vipers are the best late-game unit Zerg has. Without Vipers, it becomes a lot more difficult. It's hard to deal with defense, like mass air. It's hard to deal with entrenched positions. It's still hard with Vipers, but that is the unit designed to dislodge all those things. So, that's why we have a hotkey open. I told you the hotkey scheme. I'm actually select all army key, I know, but control 1 for my Roach Hydra. We got 70 drones. Gonna rally here. Start my hive. If you can start a hive before 10 minutes and or max out, this is great. Like, that's amazing. There are a lot of Zergs below the Gold League who just quite literally never max out, but the same goes for the other races as well. It does seem like a lot of players will get supply blocks somewhere in the 140s or so, and then that's just like the max supply for the next 10 minutes. So, if you can avoid that, SC2 replay, that's where SC2 replay stats comes in again too, is if you can avoid that and just look at the graph and see, oh wow, I was supply blocked for 6 minutes, or most of 6 minutes until I lost my army, and then I got supply blocked at the same thing 3 minutes later after I rebuilt.
Mineral patch is gone.
Just looking and seeing that visually, which we'll do during the first break, is, for all the races, I think, an important part. So yeah, I see multiple bunkers, multiple tanks. I don't even care if he has an expansion or anything. So, right now, I'm going to build some Vipers. They are quite costly, 100, 200. They do require extra control.
A mineral field has been depleted.
And now, let's jump a few steps in here and say that you're okay with getting the Vipers and keeping them alive and not just running them in the turrets or whatever. Okay, great job. But what spells do you use? Essentially, the general rule is if you want to fight, Blinding Cloud, and if you're just trying to bait him into a fight, or it's only 1 or 2 units, Abduct. It's important to note that Blinding Cloud also affects your units. So, if you Blinding Cloud an area you're about to run into, you could end up literally blinding your own units. Blinding Cloud does not disable units, it decreases their range to melee. So obviously with Zerglings and Banelings, they don't care. But with Hydras, they do very much care. So that is a key point. And another thing, well, here, I'm going to fill in all the upgrades you should have at this stage. We're going to get Burrow, which we're probably not going to use. We're going to get Overlord Speed. I'm going to get all of the hatcheries. Because, I mean, I got the money, right? So, let's inject. Shift click. I like to put my Overseers. Control, Shift 3. There you go. I like to put my Overseers with the Viper key as well. Because kind of serve the same purpose as a support unit. Not a unit you want to lose and then be like, oh my god, I don't have any Overseers.
New subscriber detected.
Thank you, Kitty Star.
Kitty Stock Courier's chillin' for 42 months.
We're gonna get some of those. Alright, so I'm bringing the queens. Shift 1. The queens are coming with. I wouldn't hotkey the queens at the main army if I have things like lurkers, but right now we're just concentrating on Roach, Hydra, Viper. We're going to be adding in lurkers and broodlords, and or broodlords, probably more lurkers. Lurkers are definitely a better unit to get used to. Broodlords are clunky and kind of mediocre in a lot of situations. But the one thing, if you go for a ground-based army like Roach, Hydra, Lurker, is going to be knowing how to deal with air. Part of that is just queens. Queens, quite literally, are better Hydras. Hydras, at the higher levels, in the words of Scarlett, are just placeholder lurkers. Or lurker eggs. But here, we're going to use them to have a baseline build while we learn other unit compositions as well.
And still in the game? Nice. You're all mined out of that.
Alright, so I'm maxed out. We got upgrades finishing. I'm going to see if he has a third. He does not. So this is... So I will tell you right now, how do you win this game? How you win this game is you wait about 5 minutes until he mines out of all his bases and either has to attack or tries to expand. But you don't have to wait. With decent Viper usage...
Stronger now. You, on the other hand?
With decent Viper usage, you can probably break the base. But I think this is the scenario a lot of people find themselves in, especially as Zerg, where you'll be up against this Bronze League hero over here. He's got more turrets than he does workers. And you're like, how do I stop him? The answer should be, how do you... All you have to do is keep him from getting more... This isn't BGH. He's gonna run out. And even though you might not be very cost-effective, if you have 5 times as many bases, you can literally be 5 times less cost-effective and still have a good shot at winning. And it's very hard to be 5 times less cost-effective when your units are doing any attacking. Twice as ineffective? Okay. 3 times if you're particularly horrible. But 5 times that's like an achievement. So how you get further ahead is essentially filling in the tech tree. Getting all the bases, mining especially as much gas as possible. Stuff like that. Like I'm getting a spire. Make sure I have all my hatcheries hotkeyed. And the second he moves out or tries to move units down, I hit him. Like right now, I got 41 larvae in the bank. We can do better than that. Inject some more. Some of that is limited because you can only
and it's not coming back.
Have 3 larvae per hatchery that isn't injected. Let's get a Baneling nest. Let's get those lurker upgrades. I recommend lurker range first if you're getting lurker upgrades. I'm going to do it this first time we're facing against this. I'm actually going to get an Overseer up there. This first time we face this, I'm going to do it right. From now on, past this, though, I will be at least trying to attack in. But the correct play is to wait for him to move out. There's a small chance, yes, that he has a bunch of battle cruisers or something. But I have the money to build 50
Mind out of that
corruptors
cluster.
if needed.
And still in the game?
And
Nice. A
you
mineral
know what
field has
I
been
should have
depleted.
done? Just send in the overseers. Technically, overseers, you can build as many as you have resources for. He's got some ghosts, which
Evolution complete.
has some interesting implications. Yeah, the reason this Terran player may have won games in the past is because of the general impatience. Honestly, your average Zerg player is definitely more like just playing Zerg makes you more
You
impatient.
took all the minerals from that
It's
cluster,
like you
thief.
saw the games we played so far, which were I'm getting attacked before I'm even ready, so that kind of gets you in the mindset. All right, let's abduct these units. Use a parasitic bomb on those medevacs. Gonna use one more parasitic bomb,
Rude, under attack. Panic
and then we'll
time.
back off.
You're all mined out of that mineral field.
We're gonna get a few more Vipers. Control
I'm done
Shift
evolving.
3.
For now, anyway.
Parasitic Bomb does not stack.
Mutation
That is
complete.
important to note. Parasitic Bomb does 120 damage over 7 seconds to air units, but you can't cast it like in the air. But what happens is if the air unit dies, the cloud sticks around for the duration. That is something that is important to note. Also in fighting against it. Yeah, the Overseer, it's an oversight mode, alright? Surveillance mode is for observers. I can use the Queens. And actually, we're going to get some Viper battery packs. We're going to build some Evo chambers for the Vipers to suck on. For their energy. Technically, you could, like, unburrow spore crawlers. If you'd like.
Out of that cluster. And still in the game? Nice.
They cannot feed off creep tumors.
You might
It'd be
have to
nice
ask
if Vipers,
Jack
well, it'd be
Where did it all
overlapping with the Corruptor, but if they could suck on enemy buildings as well. I forget if you can, I think if your allies in team games share control, you can consume their buildings, but I am not nearly 100% on that one.
And now the drones are sad.
But there are some interesting mechanics in team games that obviously aren't very relevant here. Technically, if you have enough queens, you could have a fully renewable energy source. Was that a nuke? Alright. Well, that was an interesting choice. Alright, we're gonna go up the ramp. We're going up the ramp. I'm gonna try to blinding cloud as much as possible and go up the ramp.
You took all the minerals from that cluster, you thief. You engaged the enemy. On purpose?
Blinding cloud also works on turrets. To be just pro tip. I'm gonna move those Vipers back. And Planetaires.
Your swarm is now bigger and ruthless.
So he still has one more ramp. Those queens, even though they're in my 1 key, I still have them for transfuse as well.
Nuclear launch detected. Always wanted to say that. Your brood's stronger now. You, on the other hand?
Alright. We're gonna build roaches and hydras.
Mutation finished. Yeah. Mutation done. You can run faster and stronger.
Oh, one roach survived appropriately. You got it.
A mineral field has been depleted.
I think we had to give him one. I enjoyed his
Mind out of that cluster.
his tenacity
Stay
there.
in the game? Nice.
All right. I think it's time to
Your
move on
extractor
here.
has stopped. Extracting? The enemy is
That's a barracks.
Where did it all go? The swarm is threatened. It actually worked this time.
I do appreciate. Yeah, we've had quite a range here, haven't we? Zerg Macro Master. So, Vipers are the answer, especially against, well, the real answer is waiting him out. Let him try to come down the ramp. But if you do have 15 bases and they have 2, you can afford maybe a few failed attacks. But if it's a little closer, like it's 3 or 4 bases for the Terran, you got to be careful because you might have enough, like we see in pro games as well. It might feel like you have all the money you need, and then a couple remaxes later, what happens if you have 2 units like a Queen and Viper? If you use grid keys, you can only select one type of units at a time. Like you can select a group of them, but you only have access to the abilities one at a time. You work your way through by either using different hotkeys or the tab key rotates between types of units selected. Is that a Silver League barcode? Wow. That is
This one will be better.
that is something. So, and inspired. So barcodes are for the highest tier players. Essentially, since many of the top players practice by playing on the ladder, Maru might not want, I don't know, Zest to know that new proxy rack strategy is his when they play each other on the ladder. But Zest is also on a barcode, so neither of them know, though they might have their suspicions. Below that level, it's used by people who are convinced that the reason that they're not ranking up is because their opponents know their sick builds, as opposed to making basic mistakes like getting supply blocked half the game or having 1,200 unspent minerals. So what I'm trying to say is this is Serral warming up for IEM right now. Which is kind of crazy here on the North American side. Wait, is he Zerg? Yes. Let's get that gas. I'm not sure why I'm going for the gas. To be honest, there's no reason to go for gas this early if you're not going for Zergling speed. I'm still going to be going with the Roach Horn timing. We're actually going to wall off correctly this time. I'm trying to add a few things in. Every game. Not everything every game. But we have the time. That's kind of the point of all this. There are plenty of guides out there, including mine, that are like, you got 15 minutes in your life? Let's try to learn some StarCraft, a game that takes thousands of hours just to get a grasp of. But 15 minutes, I'm sure, will do it. But, I mean, that's longer than your average attention span, so... Gonna get the Inject and hotkey the Queen. Make a Queen down here. Against Zerg, we're gonna be building that Roach Warren a little bit earlier. I think our basic build here, which I'm kind of working out, is to wall off the low ground pretty quick. 3 minutes on the Roach Warren against Zerg. Give me the creep. Sometimes you need to build a creep tumor. You gotta be careful not to have it in the wall, is important. Get some more overlords. Inject. But that creep tumor will allow me to get that Roach Warren in a nice spot. I should have started the creep tumor earlier. Gonna move this overlord a little back here. Start the lair. And there you go. You can copy those Protoss wall-ups for Zerg. Injects. Once I get to 40 drones, I'm going to be adding more gas on. No. Well, we've seen everything we need to see here. That overlord in position. I'm going to get a spine crawler behind. Inject. We'll bring this one down. So he has a lot of Zerglings. It looks like there might not be a wall there, right? Like, he is going for the Roach Warren, but I do have some roaches behind. So you'll see this a lot. This is one of the more common openers in this matchup, which is just build a bunch of Zerglings and hope for the best. But that's why we built it like a Protoss wall, because the Protoss walls are explicitly designed to hold Zergling all-ins, right? So, why can't Zerg do it? There's something to be learned from Protoss, right? Little, some might argue, but something. Start roach speed. How many drones are we at? We want to go to 44 here. One, and there we go. Right click, shift 1, 2, 3, and then I need to pick up one more. I'm gonna go get a third. Camera locations. I'm gonna get a Hydra Den as well. Now we go up to 50 drones, and then we build up that army supply. Just one creep tumor. This is mostly for vision.
The patch is gone, and it's not coming back. Mutation done. You can run faster and stronger to your death.
We are at 40 army supply right now. The probable follow-up danger is going to be Mutas. I'm just going to get a Spore Crawler in each of the mineral lines, even though I have a Hydra Den, because that is your usual script. Honestly, Zergs are the most predictable. Kind of at all levels. They're the most, surprisingly, despite how flexible they are. Because there's only like a couple paths they can follow. Like with Protoss, you don't know what variety of cheddar's coming out, right? I don't know, it could be DTs, Void Rays, Charge Lots. But with Zerg, there's your, I've watched Winter and I think I know what I'm doing kind of strategy. And they'll probably make a lot of roaches and hydras or something like that. Or there's the, this is what I saw in the trailer strategy, which is Zerglings and Mutalisks.
Mineral field.
Or like in the campaign as well. Looks like we got some roaches. So I have more than 50 army
All
supply,
done
actually.
evolving.
Need to make
For
some
now,
more
anyway.
overlords. These are all overlords, so I can just rally them right there. Get more Hydra upgrades. Shift a couple more injects there. Get some drones down to the 3rd. We're gonna go to 66 drones now. Yeah, Zerg's a little more... With Zerg, it's easier to hit worker targets because Zerg makes their workers in waves. With Larva Inject and all that, that's why you'll hear a little bit more about hitting certain targets. With Terran and Protoss, since you're incrementing them out, it's a little harder to be specifically watching like exactly 70 or whatever. But I can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 because I'm going to get 2 of these. And there you go. Get that Carapace upgrade. The ratio is about 1 to 1 with Roach Hydra. Depends a little bit on what you're facing, but not really that much at all. The big issues could be against Zerg. Does he have lurkers? We're gonna go back to those Vipers again. Probably get lurkers of our own.
Evolution complete.
Does he have Mutas? Maybe a little heavier on the Hydras, though not necessarily. Against Mutas, usually you want lurkers. Why? Because the big danger is not the Mutas. Like, Hydras can deal with them pretty well. It's Banelings. Zerglings and Banelings overwhelming your ground army and making it so the Mutas can win the fight. So, getting a lurker done in general, I think, especially when you're getting close to maxing out. But ideally, you have Hive Tech lurkers if you're getting them at all. So, let's just get a few more drones. We're going up to 70 now and maxing
It's
out.
not coming back. Brood under attack. Panic time.
Oh, good.
Thank you, House.
Now I have your attention.
House XL is chilling for 13 months. Wow.
So, I'm going to max out here. I'm going to get some Overseer. 2 or 3. Usually not just 1, but not too many, because then you're wasting your money. We have a Hive on the way. I'm going to start that Hive.
Out of that mineral field.
Select all army. Control 1. And attack. And then realize my roaches are halfway going the wrong way. He's got Overlord speed. That's a good idea.
Your Zerg have evolved.
As I attack, injects, I'm going to get another hatchery over here. So pretty much, I need to see if he's going to have lurkers.
Your
He
brood
does.
is under attack.
We're going to get the hatchery
Mineral
and
field
leave.
depleted.
I do have the detection. If it's just lurkers, it's still a little dicey, to be honest. But non-Hive Tech lurkers are not that scary. They do a lot of damage, as you can see. But if there's almost no other army, and you have a good angle, you can fight. Bronze 3, but with 130 MMR. I did lose a couple of those placement matches. So, like I mentioned, the ranking system is... It takes some time to calibrate. It takes some time to figure out where you're supposed to be. And it appears it's going to take some time here. What is he doing in bronze? So when it says bronze to masters on the description, so I no, you know what? Here in the low APM bronze to masters challenge, we're not trying to belittle those who cannot read or take context clues or figure things out for themselves. We're trying to help them. Now I'm not going to spoon feed build orders like some might. I'm not giving you something to copy and paste, but I'm trying to give you the tools with which to build yourself up instead. One, because just copy pasting things. Making that sort of content is mind-numbing for me, and not worth the effort, even if it might be popular. And two, does not help you out in the long run. Of course, if you are just looking to take some games and show off your promotion to Platinum to your Discord friends who don't give a shit because they're playing Lost Ark, and they just got this new butler waifu they want to show off to the world, well, that's the world we live in. But if you do want to learn, it's one bit at a time. That how I learned originally was a little bit of Day 9, but Day 9 only did like an hour a day, so what a casual, right? You might be like, what about quality over quantity? Both are good in everything to do with StarCraft. But with all that said, we're now in bronze, though probably won't be that long. We'll be aiming for silver tonight. As we continue to fill in the gaps and explain the basic mechanics of Zerg, which are very complicated but relatively simple, in that they're different than Terran or Protoss, but it's a lot easier to boil down Zerg into one game plan against all three races than it is especially for Protoss, but also for Terran. So it's hardest to get into, but easiest to be consistent with, if that makes sense. Why did you not counterattack with your dozen of roaches after his failed Zergling attack? Yeah, we're going to take a few questions. I'm going to show you guys all the options for injects, which is a mechanic that has surprising nuance, and then a quick break, and we're back to it. But why did I not counterattack? Because you know what's better than a dozen roaches is 200 supply of them. If he just attacked, and he spent a lot of his larva, remember, larva, the most important resource, on Zerglings, you know what he didn't spend it on? Drones. And that means I have more workers. Are 12 roaches without speed likely to end the game? It's possible, especially if he's trying to catch up. But instead of spending my time and energy, the idea is, yes, I, as a Masters player, could counterattack and build drones behind and just pull back. But if I have to choose, and starting out we have to choose, I'd focus on building up my economy, getting more upgrades, so that way my army supply can be better and I have the economy to sustain it. Like, I want to max out with +2 attack at least as quickly as possible, and that's my goal. Anything else, like as we get into gold or so, we're going to start throwing in things like counterattacks. But this series is about being as boring as possible, because boring is consistent. And slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. And that's why we're here. How do I deal with Mutalisk harass? That's a good question. And it's not just specific to Protoss. Mutalisks are actually very bad. I know, right? Incredibly annoying. Step 1, don't use the Select All Army hotkey. I'll explain why this is so critical for all three races individually. 1, for Zerg, it doesn't select your queens, so it's kind of useless. The queens are the best unit against mutas, especially early on. If you're relying on the Select All Army hotkey, you're literally ignoring your best tool. For Protoss, trying to chase down mutas is not gonna happen. Like, if they've already gotten mutas, you're gonna struggle. Most of the time, this is why Protoss is open Stargate, so you can build Phoenixes. But the general rule is something like Zealot counterattacks. If possible, you build Phoenixes, like if you see it before it hits. If not, a shield battery and a cannon in each mineral line. Not more cannons, like if they have enough mutas, the cannons don't do much. But at some points, you just have to give up bases and counterattack. Like if 20 mutas come in and you didn't see it coming, that's one kind of your fault. But you're probably better off just counterattacking as opposed to trying to chase the mutas around your bases like a Carbot episode. But the general rule is Phoenixes are your best option, static defense is your second best, and counterattack is your third. Stalkers are a bit of a stand-in. They technically hit up, but they're kind of mediocre, even against mutas in a straight-up fight. And then for Terran, another not using Select All Army, because Select All Army is likely to send your medevacs over high grounds where the mutas can snipe them. Things like Widow Mines end up just running out in front. Marauders are involved. Your best defense is one. I actually do recommend, if you suspect mutas, or you've seen mutas, building a couple sensor towers so you have a little warning. A couple Widow Mines and 2 turrets in each mineral line. 2 Widow Mines, 2 turrets. And the third option again is, if you're completely blindsided by 20 mutas or something, you might just have to counterattack. Chasing mutas around is how you lose. You just eventually the mutas pay for themselves. But think about it. 20 mutas is 2,000, 2,000. That could be 20 plus hydras. That's 40 marines. That's a lot of army that if it's in your base, is not in theirs. So, and remember, those muta players are probably playing it like it's campaign or co-op. They're staring at the mutas. That's what they're doing. If you do anything else, those mutas are very, very likely to either, one, continue doing what they're doing, ignoring the fact that their base is dying, or two, die to random things. Again, otherwise, they wouldn't be in your league. So the summary is, ideally, stop it before it starts by having enough queens or enough army or like a Stargate. But if you don't, you have to pick your battles. Mutas, the one thing mutas are good at are forcing panic. All right. Should we just unbind Select All Army? If you find yourself relying on it, and you are that, like Benny Hill, Terran or Protoss especially, that is just chasing with your whole army, including ground units, chasing mutas or void rays or whatever, try it. I'm just reminded of watching Innovation stream. Innovation did not have Select All Army bound. I watched him click it almost every game, which was hilarious. I mean, not all the time, but the fact he would go click it amused me greatly. So you can't, like, maybe put a post-it note over where it is on your screen. I don't know. Back in my day, we didn't even have, like, there are legitimate uses. Honestly, this is just a side note, a little bit of a side rant. My favorite execution of the Select All Army hotkey is how it's done in Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. One, you have a setting where you can avoid selecting workers. You just box select, and it doesn't select workers unless you hold the Alt key, which is sick, and that's very helpful. The second thing is a Select All Army on-screen button, which, just in case any of the several companies making modern RTS are looking at, that is one of the things I didn't know I wanted until I started using it. Select All Army on screen, especially combined with a large zoom out option, is incredible. So, I do like that a lot. But we don't have that in SC2, so we work with what we have, and essentially the Select All Army hotkey is using a hammer. Not every problem is a nail. Let's put it that way. Some are padlocks. A hammer might work. Some are other things you don't hit with a hammer, but also require non-hammer related solutions. Yeah, I'll let you come up with it. Technically, a bigger hammer will work for most things, but it's not always the most efficient option. Yeah, screws. Yes. What are the likely counters to CIA, and how do you adapt? As TOS. No, not as TOS, as Zerg. I'm going to adapt that question to Zerg. How do you counter Charge Lot Immortal Archon? Well, Roach Hydra Viper. but against most ground armies, adding in lurkers. The idea is we're maxing out with a better economy and better upgrades. 90% of players in the bronze, silver, gold leagues are not going to be maxing out maybe at all. Truly. Let alone in a timely manner. But assuming we've gotten to that point, lurkers and vipers are extension. Like, I've been playing a little Dota. Much to my dismay, but it is the most palatable of terrible genre games. And I do like what they do with like the build guides. You have like, this is your core. These are the items you get in order. Let's put it like that. Maybe I should make something like this. Your core in order is 50 drones, 10 queens, and then you expand to roaches with speed and +1, and then you get hydralisks. And then extension items, if needed, situational slightly. Vipers and lurkers. Lurkers require both upgrades to be useful, and vipers require a separate hotkey, so that's another active item. Yes, it's difficult, but that item is very effective at disabling the enemy's hero units, like battle cruisers or siege tanks. And if, like, you have to think, do I need to fight under this tower right now? Do I need to be fighting under a tower? Or could I try to find a fight in the jungle where he can't use the tower to help him? What is the tower? I mean, if Planetary Fortress doesn't immediately come to mind, you got cannons, stuff like that. So tunnel visioning is obviously a bad time as well. But a little bit more. Protoss question. Okay, do we have any Zergs who can speak English? Let's see. Let's try that first. Yes. All right. Is that... Okay, do we... All right, so... I think we'll go into... One, we're gonna practice. We're gonna play a quick custom game here, and I'm gonna show injects and how they work. No, quit. I need the AI to be involved, so that way I can go back. Doesn't matter. They just need to be in the game. What is a good Zergling to Baneling ratio? I don't recommend Zerglings or Banelings, but if you have to, I mean 1-to-1. Usually Banelings are added in depending on how many you need in a fight, but it's usually as many as possible thing.
Another game of StarCraft.
So we're gonna be going over the several flavors of Queen Inject, because that is essentially, like the other races have barracks or warp gates, hatcheries are your production facilities. Not doing Queen Injects in a timely manner is like not building reactors. It's like only having 4 or 5 gates. Like, you still have the natural hatchery production, but Injects double the hatchery production, give or take. I'm not exactly sure, what is it, 11 seconds per larva? But Inject adds 3 larvae every 30 seconds or so. So, it essentially doubles the production rate, as well as adds to the larva cap of the hatchery. You only get 3 natural organic larvae. I believe those larvae are always used first, as well. So, those ones regenerate. But you cannot raise the cap without using larva Inject. And that is a key point. And having that larva, this is what the biggest wombo combo of disaster that I see from the Metal League Zergs is combining larva inefficiency with poor decisions. One, not on top of the injects, so they don't have very much larva. And then they don't have very much larva because they built a bunch of Zerglings. And then because they're microing those Zerglings, they bank a bunch of money. But then the Zerglings suck because, you know, they're just Zerglings. So you lose the Zerglings, then you're like, oh shit, I need more Zerglings. And this is what I mean by bad habits on the lesson plan. Is a lot of players, even when they know they're supposed to be going Roach Hydra, like they're going for Roach Hydra, they'll lose units and then they'll panic and build more Zerglings. As just like a reflex. Without upgrades or a confident level of control, honestly, I'd say if you're not going Zergling Baneling, Zerglings are essentially only if you can't build anything else. It is almost always better to be building a queen rather than unupgraded Zerglings. Or even upgraded Zerglings in general. It is just a generally better thing. So the first thing, queens, they cost minerals. They don't cost. Queens are a net positive on your key resource, on your larva. So that is a huge difference. Besides being a drain on it, they add to it. There's just building Zerglings in general is, while iconic, Zerglings are a trap. Yes, Reynor and Serral will build thousands a game. But, for you, my friend, who doesn't have 600 APM to nail every inject with great creep spread and micro, not gonna cut it. Alright. Once we get that third base up, because this is the most practical scenario here, I will first show you what I do. I'm just still building queens. Doesn't matter here. I'm moving a little over so you can see. So, I have my camera location set. Could you get out of here, Pro? On all three bases.
Is that all?
F2, F3,
Raging Fire 1 is chilling
F4.
for 57 months. I wonder how low is your low APM? Unair 60 or just 100?
Yes. So what I do, just your basic, is F2, F3, F4. You have one queen. Just box select and slap it in. This has the benefit of not requiring any additional hotkeys. The downside is it's pretty slow. Overall. The way you avoid worrying too much about the queens, well, I usually have my non-inject queens on a different key. There are other methods, though. The simplest and oldest method is to hotkey queens individually. I don't know many players that use this anymore, but like having a queen 5, 6, 7 to have an inject on each hatch. That's simple enough. I prefer camera locations because, one, camera locations are very good. Like, the queen might be killed and then you'll have to reset it. Another option is hotkeying hatches individual in the same way, essentially as a stand-in for camera locations, so you can use them for other things. Can you go over your centering your camera? So here's how you center the camera. You see how the hatcheries are on 4? Whatever you're closest to, if you double tap the key, it will center. So simply just get close. Control F2. Control F3. Control F4. Get close mean. So what I'm using is drag scroll. Default middle mouse, I have it on a side mouse button. That's this. It is grabbing my mouse and then using that to essentially drag the screen around. You can also go to the sides, but that actually moves your mouse to the sides. This is one of the only things that casting has made me better at, is drag scroll. So that's how pros will set up their camera locations pretty close beforehand. All right. And now the fanciest, the flashiest, but also the least flexible method is backspace injects. And by backspace, I mean base camera. And by base camera, I've rebound it to spacebar. So that means whenever I hit the space bar, it rotates through my bases. How does this work? I'm going to put all my queens on the same key here. All right. So we center on a base, and then injects. So what this is doing is, well, I mean, let's do it in slow motion. That looks like the most efficient way. Yes, it looks like it. It's the fastest. That's its big benefit. Let me fight this out. But I will go over the weaknesses. The first weakness is, one, you're not using camera locations. Camera locations are useful not just for injects, they're good to have as a habit in general for being able to get to your bases when, say, you're getting dropped, or like you want to spread creep or something. Like, they have a lot more utility. That doesn't mean you can't use camera locations if you're using that. It's just easier to get in the habit of using them, if that makes sense. Two, if your queens are killed or moved, it becomes a mess. Well, I'm going to go over the specifics. So I have a hotkey with all my queens, or the queens I want to inject with. I hit the base camera key. I hit the inject key, so V, and then I hover over the center, and I don't move that key.
Underscore is chilling for 9 months. Trilla.
You got two options. You can either hold the shift key with V, and then click, and then it will select a queen nearby to inject. And you can keep doing that, but the weakness is if you hold shift to queue up injects, the queens,
From that cluster, you thief.
because there's a lag time on the inject, it has an animation time, and it will prioritize a second queen before a second time on the first one. The queens, especially if you're doing it a little haphazardly, as you can see, start running around. So the downsides is if you don't have your queens set up at each base, queens start running around, and you actually lose some efficiency.
Mind out of that cluster. And still in the game.
So
Nice.
while I've noticed players like Serral and Reynor use a combination of these two things. Like, if everything's set up fine, they will use base camera injects, and they'll just speed through it in half a second or less. And then if things are getting wild, they'll use camera locations. Honestly, switching between injects on the fly is incredibly hard. I try to do it, but it's essentially like learning to play the piano with both your right and your left hands sometimes switch sides. Like, it's the same thing, but it's very different, is what it feels like. So I would say pick a method, try a few, pick a method. I like camera locations just because you get in the habit of camera locations. Base camera is the highest quantity of injects, but I would say the lowest quality in that it has the most potential to go wrong. And then the other methods are kind of obsolete. The third method is minimap injects, which is clicking on the minimap, which I've never found to be super reliable, as, I don't know, maybe if you get good at it. You can technically click on the minimap to do it, yes. That is an option. You can do any command via the minimap to an extent. Not any command. Only building-based commands, I forget. You can chrono boost on the minimap as well, technically. Fun fact, but...
gone, and it's not coming back.
But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Are there any I'm missing? These are the major ones. Most players use camera location, base camera, or some combination, but... Have you talked about building locations? Generally, I like building buildings at the natural. Building them in the corner of your main is a liability, especially against things like battle cruisers and void race. If it's at your natural, it's less likely to be scouted, it's likely to be more close to your army, and harder to snipe. But as long as you're not building like a spire, an infestation pit, and a lurker den in the corner of your main, I think that's okay. But it is something to consider.
Your swarm is now bigger and broodier.
What do you have patrol set to? The Q key. So, patrolling overlords is definitely one of the more common things as well. Is there a shortcut to select all queens? No. You have to actively be adding them to a control group, just to be clear. Does it make sense to make a natural lair? Yes, that is usually my default. Occasionally, I'll make it in the main if, like, I need a queen's halfway done and I screwed up my build. Like, it's not a huge deal either way. But I think making it at the natural is a safer bet most of the time. You can get GM with low APM? Yes, you can. But believe it or not, 99.8% of people are not GM. So while the spectacle of me getting GM with low APM, assuming I could, might be fun, the only people I care are the ones who fight more battles in the YouTube comments and the Reddit replies, as opposed to the ones who actually want to learn how to play. And even though many of you might not be playing that many games, we're going to pretend like you are, and that's why we're here. I learned a long time ago that while appealing to the very best players, well, the best players are busy playing StarCraft, not watching at the end of the day. So that means they don't have as much time to watch all these videos. How many is the limit of number of queens injecting? Only one inject happens at a time. You might have noticed I have an inject, but you can queue up like 10 of them. You can have only a max of about 20 larvae per hatch.
Field depleted.
So that is something to note. Once you have 20 larvae per hatchery, or is it 19? I guess it's 19. After that point, you no longer, the injects are wasted, essentially. The hard max of a hatch is 19 larvae. So there you go. The more you know.
Mineral patch is gone, and it's not coming back.
Where are you going, Overlords? Generally, if you can keep at least one inject, I think it's perfectly fine. There's literally no reason not to shift queue like this. I doubt anyone watching this, including myself, is ever going to be worrying about having the queen energy at this stage of the game. So it's almost always better. So that summarizes injects. Real quick on overlords as well. Generally, now, it takes a little bit of practice, and it takes a little map knowledge, as does Zerg. But you'll notice, if you look closer, on almost every map are specific locations for overlords. Usually map makers have like a clever way of indicating them as well. As you can see here, these little biolabs. Those are actually high ground locations where potentially, well, at the very least, it's hard for ground units to kill OVs, and they give vision of a specific location. This is also pretty good for observers and stuff. So, while it's not more important than spending your money or injecting, if you find yourself wondering where to put your overlords, that's a pretty good start most of the time. The general rule is first overlord of their base, second overlord outside of yours, third overlord outside your third, fourth overlord watch in the air, and then from there, if you have spare OVs and the time to do it, just spreading them out around the map. It is a lot. There's a lot going on, and we haven't even really made any units. Like that's why Zerg has that higher APM limit, and average is just essentially housekeeping is the hardest part. Actually, the unit composition is simplest, but the housekeeping, there's a lot to do. So. All right. Well, So, with that, and as we finish placement, a quick advertising break, and then we'll be back and aiming for silver with at least 5, maybe up to towards 10 more games. We'll see how long it takes. Don't want to go over 4 hours because that's a little much. But anyways, if you guys could pause that block, that'd be awesome. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Winter, and I'm here to talk to you about Prime Gaming. Yes, Prime Gaming. It is the most exciting way to get free loot for all the games you'd be ashamed of admitting you play. Prime Gaming, every month, you can get $400,000 in GTA Online. You can get skins for New World. Remember New World? Yes, but wait! There's more! I know a lot of you were excited for the Roblox futuristic mech sled, but in order to complete the whole set, yes, I know all you Roblox fans. Wait, do they not have the Roblox thing anymore? I was looking forward to the Roblox thing. Oh wait, no. On top of your mech sled, Terrans, get excited, we got a hovering UFO. Yes. For your head, like it's a hat of some sort, I guess. So, if that doesn't get you going, I don't know what will. But consider that every month for free with Prime Gaming, you can subscribe to a streamer of your choice. Absolutely free! Yes! And don't think about it. Just do it, because every moment you don't subscribe with Prime Gaming, or otherwise, you're losing money for me. So subscribe with Prime Gaming. What do you have to lose? So much exciting loot, supporting streamers you love, and if that's not enough, remember, at Amazon Prime, we know where you live. You told us. Good luck, and good night. Thank you guys for sticking around. So, what do I explain when we come back in a few moments? Unit upgrades or basic upgrades? And then I'll explain why one is not the other as well, either way. Be right back, one moment. Yes. We are going to go over... This was a bait. No, we're going to do neither. Specifically, because we're going to do both. So, Zerg should tell you all about a theme. There's a theme to Zerg. It's that every unit has speed. Think about it. Zergling speed, Overlord speed, Roach speed, Hydra speed, Lurker speed, Ultra speed, and then Creep increases speed. Mainling speed. Closing the distance on the enemy is everything. So you might think that maybe carapace upgrades, like the defensive upgrades, are more relevant. No. About 80% of the time you prioritize attack. And in the unit compositions we're making, ranged attack upgrades are the priority. This is because, especially for Roaches and Hydras, attack gives you more. Weapon upgrades, this is true for all the races, scale with the amount of damage each attack does. Defense, armor, and shield upgrades only add +1 armor or shield. They reduce damage by 1. So overall, especially for Zerg, the idea is to do as much damage as possible and then refill and add more units. Ideally, you get both upgrades, but in general, prioritizing speed upgrades then attack upgrades are your top two things. When is it better to go Carapace first? If you end up with like Roach Ling, which you might sometimes end up with against like kind of cheesy Terran openers or Gateway Protoss, like in the early game, Carapace is sometimes a better option as it covers all your units, but most of the time you're picking either melee or ranged. Some important things are +1 Roaches kill Zerglings in 2 hits as opposed to 3. +1 Roaches are also much better than +0 Roaches. The Carapace upgrade for, I believe it's Zerglings, does allow them to survive a tank hit if they're not directly hit. Though I'm not 100% on that one. The math is a little off. But overall, I think it's not that situational. Almost all of the time you should prioritize speed and attack. Carapace is more filling in for the later game when you have more things like lurkers or maybe even ultras who benefit from it. I'm really surprised we got Bronze 3. We placed in a Bronze 1 with Terran and Protoss. Zerg! But then again, we did lose 2 of those placements. So. Zerg struggles. Mayhem is the opponent.
I'm sure it'll be better this time.
Drag scroll those camera locations. Overlord. One more drone. Overlord to that second base. Later on, as we get towards gold, I'm going to start being more specific. So kind of like how Protoss put their first pylon in different spots, Zerg put their overlords in different paths, depending on what race they're up against. That is something that takes a little more work, and it's even more confusing because it's map dependent, because some maps you need to send it a certain direction. Oh, built 1 extra drone. But, coming down to expand. First Obi. I'm gonna hang out. This is pretty much to see if any proxy rec stuff is coming in. This time, now we're buckling down, now that we finished all these placement matches. Now we're working on focusing on a build. And what's going to happen? I'm going to get my gas at 2 minutes. I'm going to get my roach warren at 3:30. Only a single set of zerglings here to start. This map does not have a pervert pillar here. Important to note. So, I'm going to go in. We're going to see if he has an expand. He does. And then here's the pillar on Berlingrad. 2 minute gas. This dog in my mineral line. Mascot. 1 inject. I'm going to put that queen on control 2. Rallying to the natural. Still building queens, obviously. 3 drones into the gas. Another overlord on 30. This overlord gonna scout for the air. I'm gonna send the zerglings. I'm gonna right click all the way to the back of his base. That's all we want to do. Start the creep between my bases. Inject. Queue up more queens. Shift 2. Inject. Shift 2. Alright. I got 30 drones. Let's make the roach warren.
You engage the enemy.
Where it is doesn't matter too much. Now, at 40 supply, 2 more overlords. Any more drones I can build, and then go down for a third. Build third. Camera location set up. Gonna get 1 more queen. We're at... Gonna go to 44 drones. This overlord, move a little further out. You know what time it is. It's 4:20. And now at 44 drones. Gonna add a couple more, but get the gases. Get an Evo chamber. Get the lair. And build. We'll get up to 5 roaches. This is your... He's attacking me now? But... I'm not going to be attacking, it's just making sure I have anything to try to match him, if he does. Now we'll go up to 50 workers. Do some injects as well. Just 1 line of creep. Some more gas. Double upgrades. Get a spore down here. Some players do like to do the Banshee plays. Alright, so the lair is done. I'm going to make an Overseer and send it through his base. Going to get roach speed. I'm going to go to 54 drones, which is enough to have a little bit of a buffer. And then get some more overlords. Start a Hydra Den, but we are making roaches now. Going up to 50 army supply, so that's going to be about 15 more roaches, though. It doesn't have to be exactly that number. More roaches. We see a bunch of bio units, which means Roach Hydra is fine. I'm going to shift-click this into oversight mode. I have the roaches to defend early. We're going to get the Hydra range upgrade, which is better on... So Hydra speed does help, But this is the exception, because Hydras on creep, they do get a benefit from the speed upgrade, but defensively, you want as much range as possible so they can shoot over the roaches.
All done evolving. For now, anyway.
I'm now going to go to those 70 drones or so. We're not going to worry about the exact number, because who knows, we might need a spine or spore crawler somewhere. Get some injects. I'm at 70 drones. Take this base. Alright, I'm spreading creep, so let's check. Am I supply block? No. Am I injecting? Let's do that. The OIC. Oh, it's a macro. Get the gases. +2, +2. More hydras now. Oh. I built so many buildings, I no longer have the 70 drones.
A mineral field has been depleted. Your swarm is now bigger and broodier.
Alright, I've spent most of my larvae. I still have 1,000 minerals. I'm gonna build more hatcheries. Part of this is I don't have gas, so right click, 1, 2, 3, shift click, 1, 2, 3, and there you go. A few more drones. And now, overlords. Enough. I'll rally them there. Inject. Make sure we have that. Hotkey these hatcheries
Mineral
together.
field depleted.
Spine and spore. Honestly, at this stage,
Mined out of that cluster.
it's time to max
And
out
still in
first
the game?
before we worry about static
Nice.
defense. Gonna make all of the hydras. Infestation pit and lurker den.
Evolution complete.
Inject. 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 More hydra. And then I'm gonna select all army for now. Control 1. We have plenty of hydras there. How many drones? 72? That's a nice number. Since the main is mining out, I'm just going to transfer some over here. We'll hotkey these in. And maxed out with 2-2 and a hive on the way by 10 minutes. That will get you through platinum. I'd be like, well, he didn't attack.
Yeah.
Well, neither did I. So, of course, part of what we did, we stopped at 44 drone. Well, we stopped when the roach horn finished to build a few, just in case. And then, at 50, built some more. And then, went to 70 when I saw he wasn't about to try to kill me. It looks like he's ready to move out as well. He's got some Whittle mines,
is under
which
attack.
means we do want some
You
overseers
took all the
added
minerals
in
from
with
that
the
cluster,
army.
you thief. Brood under attack. Panic time.
Make sure I inject, because I'm going to want the larva. I will probably lose some units here. Hive is not done yet. So this army is going to fight, and it's probably not going to do that great, because he has Marine Marauder.
Mineral field depleted.
I mean, if my upgrades are good, it'll do fine, but it's
The
not
enemy
that
is
great
attacking
against
your
what he
skill
has.
patch is gone, and it's not
And then I can refill. Well, gonna A-click, bring some queens back as well.
under attack.
It's kind of awkward position. I'm gonna do a little bit of advanced micro, because he has so many of those. That was not the ideal choice for him there. Like, Widow Mines are scary. That's why we build lurkers as well. Oh, it looks like he did not have an armory. Important to note. Start the 3-3. I queued up. Actually, I want the lurker range upgrade first. We're going to get 10 lurkers is a very nice number.
You're almost
So each of these rows is 8. How many drones do we have? Still 72. Some gas over here. We definitely need more gas. I'm just gonna fill in some roaches for the front. I lost a lot. Like the most expensive but also easiest way to deal with widow mines is simply overlords. Ideally with speed. Just sending overlords or overseers over them because they do target the closest unit.
All done evolving. For now, anyway.
We got plenty of money. Before I worry about attacking, I'm gonna take all the bases I can. Because like one of the most common things I think at this level you see
A mineral
is
field
just
has been depleted.
not really playing Zerg to its biggest strengths,
Still in the game? Nice.
which is the ability to play like a Zerg, like expand over pretty much the entire map.
And Rudy.
Oh my god, why are my lurker? I remember going over this in the hotkeys section, but I actually have my burrow and unburrow. Oh, maybe not now. Backwards. I like to have burrow on R and unburrow on D, as opposed to the other way around.
Evolution complete.
Because back in my day, burrow was only on R. Okay. That was the only key. Just for habit's sake, we're gonna get some vipers here.
Mineral field depleted.
Oh. I put some lurkers on too,
A mineral field
but
has been depleted.
honestly, in most armies... So I probably went over there. I tried not to cut any corners. I tried to do... Like, I kind of stopped creep spreading because the priority was building units and getting drones. Creep spread is good, but creep doesn't fight the enemy. At least anywhere but emotionally. So it's more important to have 30 more supply of units than it is to have a little more creep spread. Obviously, you want more than none, but it's significantly more important to spend that money. I knew we could do it. It's figuring it out. Thankfully, it is thinking hard about whether I should actually be here. We did go over. In fact, I said 60 in bronze for Zerg. But we're not going to be doing that. I think 75 is the target. Why? I'll tell you right now. I can compare it to Terran and Protoss. It's not that Zerg is harder, but think of the process for making units. You select the hatchery. You select the larva. And then you build each unit. So you're already 3 actions per unit. Of course, it's if you're building them all at the same time, it's less. But these are the type of things. On top of the fact, you don't need to micro your supply depots as Terran, right? Well, you might feel the need. A lot of Terrans do feel the need to micro their supply depots for some reason. But
Good. Now I have your attention.
Wonder Gaming is now
But
chilling.
overall, just generally, it's not that Zerg takes more actions. I'm telling you right now, I'm playing at the same speed
Oh, here we go again.
that I have been playing Terran and Protoss. Like the same relative game speed. It's just, it manifests as the higher number. So, I am doing my best to cut down, but the idea here is to do the very minimum while still showing what you can expect to accomplish at this level. Yeah, spreading creep is another one. Like, pretty much all of Zerg is APM, quote, inflation. Because all the little details. On top of the fact you just build more units than the other races. So But the first thing to cut out, like if you find yourself not keeping up, not maxing out as quick as you need to, first thing you cut out, it's going to be creep spread. Creep spread is great. It's good. But past like a screen outside of your base, it's not nearly as important as having more units. Alright, we got this done. We're going to be using the exact same build I used against the Terran, against Protoss. Get the gas at 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to get real... Well, not real fancy, but... Going to get a set of Zerglings that I rally to his side of the map. My third Overlord is going to the third. I'm going to rally my drones here. Just conveniently lines up. Got 1 queen. Get 3 in gas. Hotkey the queen. Getting creep spread to the natural is a very important part. So, what do we see here? A forge and some zealots. Spine crawler. And we're going to make... So, 4 Zerglings can kill a Zealot, but that is multiple Zealots. And in lower numbers, the Zealots will win the fight. With 1... Now, this is a very important and nice learning experience. He is attacking me. The Overlord saw it. The Overlord will pretty much always see it. And if I don't see anything, it's also suspicious. So either I see what he's doing, and that tells me what he's doing, or I see nothing, and he's doing something else. And I still have to be a little wary. Let's get that Roach Warren started. Yeah. In fact, looking at it now, this feels like a bit of an overreaction. I probably would have built even less Zerglings if I didn't see he didn't have a wall. So this is one of the rare times I will counterattack. But I want to stress right now how important it is that I focus on my build, not on my attack. Essentially, I will go in if there's no units, or if there's units I can easily kill, I'll worry about that. If there aren't, or if there's like a cannon, then I'll move on with my life. We're going to move that Spore Crawler. Or all my bro hotkeys screwed up. Oh, it looks like he transferred probes. Like I mentioned earlier, transferring this early is not really necessary. And also just makes you more vulnerable, especially if you didn't wall off. I guess we'll go for the Nexus then. It's Spore 20. Just because he probably doesn't have a Stargate, it's good to be in the habit. Let's get to... We got 40 drones. I'm skipping the roaches now because I already have Zerglings, right? So we're gonna get a third here, at least by 5 minutes, even if getting cheesed. Start a lair.
Your brood is under attack.
Why did I start it there? I don't know, but I'd rather not cancel it. So now we're gonna go to 50 drones. I'm hovering over, in case you didn't notice, I'm hovering over and seeing... This includes the ones you're producing right now. So that's not how many are finished. Get an Evo chamber, get these gases. And the Zerglings go into the main. So... let's see what there is to see. Alright. So, my opponent. What if I want to kill my opponent? I think I can kill my opponent. I don't want to spend 8 more minutes in this game. Well then, 54, 55. We'll do 55 rounds. Alright. Oh, I'm old. There could, remember, there could still be something out there. Like, there could be a hidden base or something. I don't really care. You're gonna get +1 attack. I'm gonna make sure we got injects, and I'm building roaches. Control 1 from the eggs. Injects are the most relevant part of this, because I have the money, but 54 drones shouldn't be banking up money. Not if you are constantly spending your larvas. So...
The swarm is threatened.
more roaches. I'm going to get Overlord speed, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send an Overlord on patrol. Alright, here's what we're going to do. You can do it via the minimap, but I'll show you what I would do on the minimap here.
All done evolving. For now, anyway.
It would be a right click, and then shift, Q. Well, I have patrol on Q. And then the Overlord will follow that pattern.
Mineral patch is gone, and it's not coming back.
Of course, without Overlord speed, it's going to take a long time. Overlord speed is actually one of the quickest upgrades
Bigger and broodier.
in the game. It's, I believe it's 60 seconds. Either way, it is one of the quickest upgrades. Get some Overseers here. Nope, those are Ravagers. Fun fact, Ravagers act like buildings, so when you cancel them, you don't get full money back. When you cancel units, you get the money back for any race. But the thing for Zerg is if you cancel larva, you don't get the larva back. So that is an extra punishment. That's why larva is just this additional resource to consider. And a lot of people don't respect their larva. Okay? I'm sick and tired of people not respecting their larva. It's special. Treat it like it. If there's anything I want people to take away, like as Zergs, you're not a weird version of Terran. It's something else entirely. I think it's important to kind of come in with a fresh mindset. Because if you try to apply the other races' mindset, of course, it's the same game, but it's like a difference between like a goalkeeper and a forward. Or... Yeah, that works. Most. Well, those stalkers had a bad time. Why are we attacking now? I'll be honest, I just kind of decided this is the time. This is not a specific timing, just felt like that's enough. Well, he started attacking me, I think, and then I just continued A-moving. We're gonna oversight mode. So that was a more typical early pressure. That was him building seemingly random units, but if you're focused, if you're not paying attention at all to the other side and two zealots show up, that can really throw you off. Of course, you can't overmake Zerglings. Overmaking Zerglings is disrespecting larva, and you know how I feel about that. I believe that actually was one of his first games. Shout out to him. By the way, I gotta give him some credit. He did expand at all. Like, I will give credit where credit's due to our Protoss opponent there. Like, players starting out, it's kind of crazy how, like, in Wings of Liberty, now, the mechanics are different, the maps are different, the economy's different, but in Wings of Liberty, it was a legitimate top-tier play to stay on one base for 15 minutes. Like, not necessarily because you couldn't expand, people were banking up, like, people who think Wings of Liberty was the peak StarCraft 2, Go watch those VODs if you can find them in high enough resolution to see how many minerals they were banking. Like, if you think Cure has bad marine micro, go back and watch 2012 before Marine King invented marine splits. Like, it's been a long time. There was a time before that, like in Brood War, because your units
Wonder Gaming
have
is
more
now
trouble.
silly.
Why does it do that
Welcome
for the
back to
gifted stuff? We did go over the 75.
Another game of StarCraft.
It is bronzy. Blind melon, congratulations. Isn't that like a default melon? Anyways. But yeah, like, especially Zerg players in Wings of Liberty. Now, all the macro mechanics were more punishing. Back in Wings of Liberty, back in my day, you couldn't queue up injects. You pretty much, people would set like a timer for every 40 in-game seconds, which is what it was before, where it would remind you to inject, because every second you didn't, you were literally just losing uptime. Now you can queue them up. So if you miss it for a few seconds, you don't get punished as much. But injects only give you 3 larvae, as opposed to 4 back in the day. Now this is also true for the other races. Chrono Boost lost some of its effectiveness, and mules don't mine as many minerals per trip. So the idea is these macro mechanics, while still important, are not... You don't get punished as much for being a couple seconds slow. All right. Uh-huh. Well. Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. So that is part of the reason why we're putting the overlords in these standard locations. The idea is... Oh, looks like he's back. The idea is we'll catch any of the more blatant cheeses, and anything that's not
It'll be better this time.
is, that's the same guy. So... we will see. Was he trying to build a planetary? Maybe he just wanted to get to know me better. I don't, So, he could have just built it and flown it in. Though, the counter for Zerg is, well, remember, in case you're on the receiving end of any of these spicy cheeses, buildings can't land if there are units underneath them. That cute little Zergling. Alright, is enough. No, we can't land there, sir. It's too cute. Alright, bring the Marines in to murder it. That's perfectly okay. It's much more humane. Or maybe you just don't want to get all the Zergling up in the command center's, you know, workings. Alright, one set of Zerglings. Gonna get that gas at 2 minutes. It doesn't Han and Horner. Wait, there's a co-op commander that can teleport, the Rick and Morty thing. The Zerglings are going to go across. Queue up another queen. There's a barracks there. Which, now we're getting a little into the more advanced timings, but that barracks, I think, is late. So, I mean, we're already a little suspicious of Mr. Panda here. But that might not be his only one. Either way, so what does this mean? We're going to build more queens. That's the plan. And, here we are.
You engaged the enemy. On purpose?
I'm building some drones now.
Brood under attack. Panic time.
We're gonna get that roach warren. But now we have the cute Zerglings. This is, if there's a command center in your base, this is one of the timings you can tunnel vision, by the way. He invested essentially all of his minerals in building a command center. So, where did it go? He's microing his Reaper now, which is very
Your
taxing.
brood is under attack.
We're gonna get the lair. I'm just gonna try to spend money, and most of that is getting queens. Spore 20 already passed. Did you know that that Terran buildings fly faster than overlords without speed? Isn't that sad?
Evolution complete.
Take a look. Oh, he was just starting this base, but then he realized I learned his movement speed is 1.31 and Overlord is 0.9. It's not even close. What, something with massive engines moves faster than a hot air balloon with a bad temperament? How crazy is that? What are the next steps? Well, the next step after the planetary is the Zerg player leaving the game because they have no idea how to deal with it. Yeah, we went over. There's going to be a lot of that with Zerg, I feel. A lot of right-clicking Zerglings in a drone underneath a command. Yeah, that is one of the... Tunnel vision appropriate. How many Marines? He had Marines?
Gaming has gifted 3 subs to viewers.
He had a command. Can you make the drone? It doesn't work. If you right-click the drone, what'll happen? It might work, but it's kind of finicky. Because one, it might fly over to the high ground areas and land before the drone can catch up. In two, it'll follow the edge of it. It won't follow the middle. So there's a chance it can land. Oh, he's bronze now. I see. He was gold just a few days ago. Though we've taken some of those ladder points.
One way or another, you got this.
So for those who don't know, he's made it clear he's been enjoying the stream while we're doing the low APM challenge and playing games against him, this opponent. It's actually usually been earlier on. Took him a while to find the target-rich environment tonight. We're still going to try to be as efficient as possible, but if necessary, we'll be a little more advanced. Not no limit. I'm just going to do essentially a more Gold League, though, which is +1 roach timing, potentially. Or is it Ultralisk Nidus Infestor Rush, which Mass Spore Crawler actually counters by flooding your main base with so many spores they can't build a Nidus in it. That's the actual pro gamer counter. So, against Zerg, first Overlord goes to the natural, and second Overlord goes to their third. In higher levels EVZ, the key point, if we go to the guide, is that you can see everything. You can see everything they're doing, except for exactly in their main. So a lot of ZVZ ends up being hiding timings and then running out of your base with a bunch of Zerglings or something. But you want to get as much information as possible, especially because Overlords, the only thing that can really deal with them are Queens early on. So, and Queens, not good off a creep, especially when Zerglings are running around. So you essentially have vision of the entire map, but like I mentioned, their base. I'm so bad I float 2 to 3k minerals. Well, that means you built enough drones to float minerals. Wouldn't you argue it's better to have too much money and not know how to spend it, rather than not enough money? But let's apply that to real life. If you have too much money and you don't know how to spend it, I'm a StarCraft 2 many times Grandmaster. I probably can spend it more efficiently. So, easy peasy, just give me your money. And I'll solve that for you. Like and subscribe. It's got a roach warrant. So this is why, well, these Zerglings were for scouting here. But now they are for killing any drones. We'll get the gas, get roach warrant. And just in case, I do have the Overlords. He can't, without a lair, there's no way for him to get out of his base without me seeing it. It's just not possible. One Overlord. Now these Overlords are a little closer to my base, but start the lair. Get more gas. We're still gonna sit on 2 base. +1 attack is the preference.
follower.
Thank you, Magikarp, for being effective.
Magikarp 2 is chilling for 1 month.
Some more overlords is going to be the focus. And we'll take that third. There is done. I'm gonna get an overseer, do his base. We'll see if he wants to play whack-a-mole for a while. So it takes 4 corrosive biles to kill an Ovi.
On purpose?
Fun fact.
Mutation complete.
All right. And now, everyone else.
You took all the
That was the most valuable use of everyone's time. Now here comes the one Ravager hit squad. More roaches. Actually, I need more Ovies here. Make sure everybody can get involved in the group activity of murdering him.
The enemy is attacking your swarm.
How much more damage does +1 give? I believe they start... Is it 16 or 15? Now we'll see. He doesn't have any more roaches to check.
Mineral field.
It is more than one. It's 16. You can check with the Liquipedia as well. Yeah, it starts at 16, and every damage upgrade gives it +2 attack. So, which is more than +1 on. I'm a mathematician. Alright, I'm just padding my stats now, but...
It actually worked this time.
I knew we could do it. $75 on the dot. When are you doing, Angry Coach? Maybe next week. We'll see. We're doing regular. Okay. So we got a couple more games. I don't know if we're gonna make it all the way to silver tonight, because we still got
Oh,
Q&A
Q&A
coming up.
Your attention.
Thank you. Make better
Make
media.
better media APM is chilling for 46 months. 46 is a semi-prime number.
But
as its
get your
only
questions
factors are
ready.
1,
I think
2,
probably
23,
2 more games,
46.
and then we're going to do some Q&A. And we will be answering questions for all 3 races, though focusing on Zerg. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will be collecting those questions for each next iteration. Get that OV at the natural. Spawning pool. I'm gonna rally this. I've got 16 drones. Next drone. From the egg, rally down. Feel very fancy. What's the easiest cheese I can do with Zerg and piss him off? Why cheese? Why not crush him in a macro game? Honestly, learning to get 55 or so drones and then going for roaches, which stalkers technically counter roaches, but roaches are half the price of stalkers, which is their big advantage. And I guarantee you, if your friend is going mass stalker, he doesn't have many other plans. Also, that's the kind of strategy that is kind of hard for a Zerg player to cheese. That's part of why it can be effective. Is like they'll not die to anything early. At least it's very hard unless they really screw it up or have no idea how to wall up. In which case you can just make Zerglings. That's not that hard. Speaking of, it looks like this guy is making some Zerglings. We're actually going to get a roach horn in here. Send those first 2 lings across. Gonna make a spine crawler. I'm getting the roach one. I'm getting some gas. I expect right now there to be like 20 Zerglings coming out of the base. Alternate is several roaches. I'm still going to go to 24 drones, which is full 1 base saturation, but I have 2 bases, so gives me even more income. Get some more ovies, and roaches it is. So, I've got to be careful not to have no economy here, but we're going to build 5 roaches. Get those injects. Another gas geyser here. What are we? And then more drones. Alright, well we can see. I'm going to 8 roaches. Why? Because he has like 8 roaches. I want as many as him. Remember, our focus here is not on getting ready for some big counterattack. It's just defending, getting a bigger economy, and then crushing him with a solid timing. If I have as many roaches plus 1 spine... Ooh. Clever girl. Spore crawler. I didn't expect that. I don't think it's that big a difference here, but I think he accidentally rallied that drone. And I will chase as far as I can. But I didn't expect the burrow. Spicy. So you need a lair to get burrow move. Burrow move gives you the ability to, burrow move, as well as the regeneration you get from burrowing. So, if he had a similar amount of roaches, he could actually win the fight with burrow micro. But if I have more roaches, or like a spine, then it was just kind of a waste of 100. Cute, though. Very cute. Get that overseer, but instead of sending it across, we're just gonna hotkey it in with the army. Looks like he has some more roaches. Alright, here's your advanced tactics. When you morph a unit, it goes to full HP. So, I'm gonna make a few Ravagers here. Out of the low health. I could transfuse as well, but Why not? Ravagers are okay. It's just I don't want to get too caught up in microing corrosive bile. You know how that ends. We're gonna move the spore crawler up to the front. I'm gonna move an overlord into the corner of my main, because the only place that he could sneak in is with a Nidus in the main, which, I mean, I don't know if he even has a lair done yet, but he's been rallying a bunch of roaches across. Yeah, here you go.
Mineral field has been depleted.
Throw a corrosive bile in there. Corrosive bile is not a huge amount of damage, especially just a single one, but it's used to essentially make your opponent micro. A lot of players will see the corrosive bile and immediately just select all army, try to move out of the way.
Mind out of that cluster.
And that means they're not attacking. That's also what it's used for against, like, Terran armies. His burrow, he's been having so much success with his burrow strike maneuver. Oh, once again over the top. But not this time. The counter, I think what happens is a lot of players will freak out immediately. It's like, oh my god, where did the roaches go? Kind of thing. But there's no reason to panic. It's still, the roaches don't do more damage if they bow. In fact, they don't attack at all. They're not lurkers. They're not mines.
Good. Now I have your attention.
They're just
Gaming is now
roaches. So, just keep it. We gotta work on these alerts, Jimmy. All right. Depending on how long this game is, it might be the last one, maybe the one
You
after,
got this. One way or another.
and then some Q&A. But I actually think we've had some pretty solid, like, we've set a pretty solid baseline. Where getting queens, getting 50 drones, finding those timings, I think that's something I have struggled to explain in the past. Is drones versus not drones. That was the thing on the lesson plan. And you can find some timings, especially early on, where you're making not drones. But it's important to think about why. Like, am I doing this because I don't know what's happening? Am I doing this because I do need units to defend? There are rules to follow, but Zerg is very flexible. The baseline is build queens, think about units, and get those overlords out there. The only reason we're building some roaches early in some of these games is just to get in the habit of making sure we have a roach one. Not to attack, and that is specifically why I'm not attacking with the early roaches. Even though I probably could in some of the games, I'm not attacking because it's more important to worry about getting more ahead as time goes on, as opposed to trying to kill them with half a dozen roaches. I mean, you saw that last guy.
Oh, good. Now I have your attention.
I just want to see a bunch of
Tom
Zerg games.
Clancy's Rainbow
I mean,
is chilling for 17 months.
what have we been
Mr.
doing?
Winter, can you please play a bunch of Zerg games in a row, please, bro? I just want to see a bunch of Zerg games, please.
You're in luck. Alright, command center. I'm gonna send these Zerglings into his base. Let's get that gas geyser. I'm literally just right-clicking the back of his main. That's it. Let's move this overlord right there. That is a pervert pillar. It's one of those map ones that map makers add in. What do we see? All right. Are those barracks? Yes. So what does that mean? We're still gonna make the Spore 20 crawlers, but and we are going to need to worry about roaches pretty early. All right. This is as much micro as I'll do. And now ignore them. But if you can delay the command center, it is a very
The enemy
nice
is
thing to
attacking
do.
your swarm.
I don't need roaches. You might look at that and be like, wow, he's going to have a lot of units. I need units now. No, those barracks are building. And even if he does move out, it's unupgraded Marines. It's going to be at least 2 minutes until they can have combat shield or stim, because he has to finish building the racks. He has to build the tech labs, and then he has to actually upgrade those things. So I have until probably about 5 minutes before I even need to think about getting attacked. So we're building drones for a little while longer. We're gonna get everything set. Cancel that queen, because that's where I'm gonna build my lair. Make sure, well, I can actually spend a little time on creep spread, which is kind of rare. Get a lair, a roach warren. I don't really need to wall off, actually. And just as a matter of habit, sport 20. Sometimes, if you try to build it in the mineral line, the drones will get pissed off and not do it. So you gotta be a little careful on that. The key of this Overlord is, especially since he didn't have a factory early, that Overlord will see when he moves out. I've got multiple Overlords that can give me that vision. Layers finishing. We only see the 2. There's only 2 Marines over there, but we're at 50 drones. I'm starting roach speed. Gonna rally to this base. Make sure we have the creep. Inject. Mining all the gas. And now I'm building roaches. I'm gonna go to 50 army supply with 50 drones. A little more creep. Remember, queens do count towards army supply, and they should be part of your army fighting early on. So that is why, even though you just started building roaches, it seems like the army supply is so high. And we're counting it. The queens are better than each roach for the 2 supply they cost. Alright, we got 50 army supply. This is for not dying. This is my not dying army supply. And now that I'm comfortable with that, we're going to get a Hydra Den. I'm going to get an Overseer and just send it through that base. Get a few more Overlords, 5 or 6.
All done evolving. For now, anyway.
Make sure we have those injects. And now, drones. We're going to 70 drones. Creep tumors, just 1. I'm not trying to do all the creep spread, just a little vision if possible.
Finished. Yeah.
Start +2 attack. Hydra range. Inject. Inject.
Mineral patch is gone.
Inject.
It's not coming back.
And this will be the last round at drones.
The swarm is threatened.
Looks like he's got a lot of bio units, which, once again, Roach Hydra not incredible against, but it's about a quantity over quality situation right now. Oh yeah, the creep bug on this map. So there are some spots that are creep phobic, which is very rude of them. It's a bit of a tile set bug, I think. You're like, your entire race is bugs.
You engage the enemy. On purpose?
Alright, let's get those hatcheries. I'm gonna start the infestation pit and the lurker den, and now we build the hydras. Right click, shift, 1, 2, 3. Right click, shift, 1, 2,
Your
3.
swarm is now mineral field depleted.
Gonna get some more overlords here as well. Just rally them over there. Shit. Injects. I'm building as many hydras as possible before filling in roaches, because hydras are more expensive. They take longer to build. It's better to get them done as quick as possible.
A mineral field has been depleted.
I overdid it on the overlords. Alright. Oh my. Gonna start transferring some drones. I'm gonna max out though before I add on any more upgrades or like a hive. I do forget Hydra speed a lot. We've gone back and forth on the combined upgrades, but I forgot Hydra speed for a moment there. I just select all armied, which included this overseer, which was looking at all this. Let's click on his units. He has 0, 0 upgrades. I have 2, 2. So, we'll start the hive. I'm going to fill in some drones here. If you have better upgrades or even with a Terran Bio army, Roach Hydra should be able to win with even or higher supply. But if they have better upgrades or a larger army, you need things like Vipers and Lurkers to compete. Because Roach Hydra is not the most effective army, but it's a quantity over quality situation.
You took all the minerals from that cluster,
So, I'm making more Hydras.
9 out of that cluster. And still in the game? Nice. Your swarm
More
is
injects.
now bigger and broodier.
We'll just continue because I didn't see any tanks, right? So
Your brood is under attack. Mineral patch is gone, and it's not coming back.
But this is why we started the hive, and we got the lurker done. Because while maxing out on this will get you very far, almost always, even me, when I'm going for this composition, you're gonna have the money for a hive. I think that's what a lot of players kind of forget about, is the hive. Never forget. Queens early, and then hive later. If he's not, like when I saw the barracks, I focused a little less on the queens, but if it was a starport or something, once again, over the top. Zerg! Oh, why are you so hard? 83 APM. I think it is important. Like, it takes more practice. You can't, like, you can cut out the creep spread, but I feel I'm scraping. Like, I would have to literally sit there and do nothing for a time. This is playing, it feels like it's playing at the same speed as Terran and Protoss. It's just the way the mechanics work that inflate it. So, I owe the people. Two more. Well, I already adjusted to 75. Zerg's so hard. Well, before we even scratch at silver, we're going to do some Q&A. We're going to wrap up the games there tonight. What is the summary? Okay.
Winter Gaming has gifted 2 subs to viewers.
How generous of this Winter Gaming fellow. But, what we're going to summarize. 1. Expect to get bullied as Zerg. More than any other race. You do not have the sort of options that Terran and Protoss do for easy peasy pressure. Sure, you can do a Zerg rush, or Zergling rush, or a Roach rush. They're just not as good or as easy to do as like a Void Ray, or a Zealot Rush, or a Marine, or even a Planetary. That's very simply, your units in the early game are mostly worse at attacking. But that doesn't mean you don't have options. And what we're trying to learn here, I think maybe we'll do like an addendum or a day where I just do all ins. But I think it's very important. One, choose your inject style. I'm going to recommend more than any other race. I want you to play against the AI for 5 or so games and figure out how you're going to do those injects like we went over during the break. What works for you, just kind of getting used to all of them. Because remember, Larva is special. Queens are great, and Creep is pretty good, but not as important. As well as Overlord placements. First Overlord to their base, second Overlord outside yours. Third Overlord to the third, and the fourth one looks for anything else. Avoiding bad habits. Those bad habits, building Zerglings. I'm so sorry. But besides your initial 2 to 6 lings, only if you're getting one base cheesed. That's about it. That's what Zerglings are for. We'll be learning more about Zerglings later on, but very simply, at this level, if you're building Zerglings, you're not respecting Zerglings, and you're not respecting your larva. Because there's no real scenario where Zerglings are a better option besides defending the very early game cheeses. Do you have a lesson plan for Protoss? Yes, we've already done Terran and Protoss. Those are already up on YouTube. And when this is up on YouTube, now you'll have the full setup. What if I want to do run-bys on 3 bases at once? It's good to have dreams. And another thing, drones versus not drones. I gave you a baseline. Remember, this is not your... this is essentially your one-size-fits-all. It's like a medium t-shirt. Okay? What does that mean? It's different for everyone, but maybe that wasn't a good example. But the idea is it's not tailored to any specific thing. It's just kind of a generally fits most things situation. And that is why, like, I'll go over the benchmarking. Let me think and try to put it down in a concise way. 17 spawning pool, 17 hatch. Gas at 2 minutes. Roach Warren at 3. 5 roaches if you think you need defense. Otherwise, 50 drones into 50 army supply. Build queens until you need to otherwise. Don't forget Spore 20. And start a lair and an Evo chamber, at least one, by 5 minutes. The goal is to get to 70 workers and to have +2 attack for a maxed out Roach Hydra army. We'll say by 11 minutes, but you can definitely do better than that. Before you attack, get an infestation pit and a lurker den, and let's be honest here, a few more hatcheries. And then you get to attack. And before you complain about siege tanks, remember, you started that hive, right? And Vipers exist. If you get attacked early and you die, well, that's called a learning experience. Honestly, playing Zerg is a lot about dying to seemingly random things and kind of figuring out how far you can go building drones before you have to stop. And that's why I say, as you saw from me even, losing a couple games to those early timings, because that's just part of learning Zerg. Get used to it. Or figure out some sort of one base like Roach All In and ignore 95% of what I've said today. So the choice is up to you. At what point does SC2 begin being a strategy game? IEM's going on, right? I believe it's not necessary. It's partly, but not really a coincidence that we're restarting this series right around the time of Intel Extreme Masters. It is kind of. I did plan on starting it early this year, and I mean the tournament's at the start of the year. But really, I think you can get away with playing it like Factorio as opposed to a strategy game. Right up until, well, through the Meta League, until through the lesson plan, until Platinum or so. In Diamond is when you need to kind of adapt to what your opponent is doing more than worrying about your own production setup and efficiency. But truly, StarCraft is a lot closer to Factorio than it is to, like, chess until you get up to those higher leagues. Because the main focus is not on countering what the Zerg are doing. It is on making sure you have the most efficient production setup with a minimum of investment in defense while you maximize your production. More artistically, Neuro has described, Neuro, the part-time Zen master, as well as philosopher and possibly an actual real-life Viking, it's unclear, describes StarCraft as playing a song on the piano where occasionally, like two people playing on pianos, dueling pianos, but occasionally you slap the other person across the face. And that's the strategy. Whoever is able to play the song better usually ends up winning. But it is more worrying about yourself, and then if you're good enough and practiced enough, you can slap the other guy. So. How would a seasoned Zerg handle Mass Void Ray? Queens. Queen Walk. We'll be doing Queen Walks. It's necessary. Higher up. But Vipers are actually the answer to Mass Sky Toss. Vipers, Parasitic Bomb, Abduct. A lot of people are like, but what about Storms? Well, you asked about Void Rays. A lot of Protoss don't get kind of lazy. But the Queen Walk, honestly, is the way to go. We're going to be doing some of that because it is necessary. The danger is when the Protoss also goes for Storm alongside like the Carrier Deathball. And what is the answer? I'm hoping that with Intel Extreme Masters, we'll find an easier answer than Queen Walk or Micro 4 different spellcasters. Usually against non-Zest level players, you can get away with focusing on Corruptors and Vipers, as opposed to having to also have like Infestors and or Queens, but it's not easy. And I think an important point for those higher level players is Hydras are not an anti-air unit. Hydras are worse Queens. A lot of people think Hydras are an anti-air unit. They are not. Not if you want to actually fight. They can stand in for things like Queens and Corruptors, but they are better as placeholders for Lurkers. It's just they're too vulnerable to too many things, too much splash damage to be a reliable anti-air.
For 46 months.
Thank you, Gamer XP. So I think a lot of players, like, I'm literally showing people how to make Roach Hydra now, but there are exceptions to every rule, and going up against a mass turtle air army is one of those. But remember, in Platinum, for each race, let's go through. That's about when we're going to be working on that later game army control. I am fully and I can 100% guarantee you can get well into Platinum before worrying about what late game looks like. If you max out quick enough, you will easily get to Platinum. And if you don't, then you're not doing it quickly enough. Or somebody else is doing the exact same thing and hitting you on the ladder at the same time. So, but there are a lot of parallels. Zerg does have some of those specific quirks like Larva, but when the transition from Roach Hydra to Lurkers, like in that last game, essentially, if you can't break 3 base, if you're on 4 base and they're on 3 and Roach Hydra's not going to cut it, like you see they have a ton of siege tanks, or they have, essentially if you think they're pretty close to maxed out, that's when you're no longer using the brick. That's when your quantity doesn't necessarily outdo their quality. The general rule is if they can hold 3 bases, you need later game units. That's very, very general, but if they can't hold 3 bases, you can just keep pounding on them because you get the rest of the map. If you could summarize all of the goals of all 3 races in a haiku, what is a haiku again? What is haiku? 3 lines of 5, 7. Terran repeat stuff. Zerg need to respect larva. Protoss don't. Protoss need your tech. Terran repeat stuff. Zerg, respect your larva. Protoss need your tech. There you go. And is my guide done? Are we all done? We'll take a couple more questions, but... Can you explain the ZVZ matchup meme? All right, we'll go to the matchup, the comprehensive matchup guide. I'll explain this. This is more for higher level players. ZVZ. So because overlords exist, means you can see everything on the map, but literally the main and the natural in the early game. Because the only thing that can kill overlords are queens, which cannot fly, which we'll get to. Queens cannot fly, and they can't easily go out of your base. So that means everything needs to be hidden in your main. So as soon as you go out on the map, your opponent sees it, but you wait to stab them with whatever you can a lot of the time. Like big Zergling floods, lurkers, mutas, stuff like that. Zerg versus Protoss. Queens walk, they don't fly. And Zerg versus Terran. Widowmines, much to the dismay of everyone, exist. So... Any questions? When did the pros figure out the idea of Queen Walk? Queen Walks have been a thing throughout StarCraft 2. It's just with the buff to the Void Ray in 2020, it became a lot more popular to find a timing before especially Protoss could mass up a big defensive army. Before that, it was definitely a more stylistic choice, but it started out as the German taxi build. The German taxi build was named after, was it Lambo? I'm pretty sure it was Lambo. Which is getting overlord speed to fairy queens and dropper lords, thus the taxi. And that was fun. And then people realized, no, you need more queens. So instead of taking a taxi, they just take all of the queens and walk across. Because while Stargate units are strong, they don't do that much damage. So hitting quickly is not as important as hitting with overwhelming force. And that is why the Queen Walks are what they are. They don't even hit that quick. It's just when you're going Stargate, there's a lot of ramping up into Stargate tech. And if you don't have a ground army, you can just get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of units. That has become more and more popular as Protoss players have gotten better at late game Sky Toss, and Zerg players have become less consistent at dealing with it, because it is very difficult to pick apart that Sky Toss army. How do you handle unit micro like you do? 50,000 games of practice, and also I haven't been microing very much at all during this. Honestly, I bet I could do the same things as your average bronze leaguer with half their APM. Which, the reason we're able to do this partially is because I know what all the hotkeys are, I know where I want to send things. The entire point is I'm trying to show you that instead of literally just playing faster, playing slower but doing it more accurately is more important. And that is the part that, even though I have less APM than most of my opponents, is just slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's not a very complicated process. It's not honestly, StarCraft is not a complicated game. It's the difference between complexity and difficulty. Those are not the same thing. They can be related, but they're not the same thing. Like, for example, take League of Legends. I know. Just 1 second. Imagine, in order to know what League of Legends is, one, just understanding how the game is played, you have to read an encyclopedia of things that are completely unintuitive. You have to try to kill the AI things while the tower... And then you have to read another encyclopedia for the 100 and something champions that all have different abilities for 100 different items that interact in 100 different ways. StarCraft, each race has around 15 or 16 units. Upgrades, there are 3 or 4 different unit tags. Armored, biological, psionic, mechanical. I'm probably missing 1 or 2, like massive, but... There are a couple unique attributes. Abilities are unaffected by armor. Ranged and melee attacks sometimes have different effects or different upgrades. Everyone's workers mine the same amount, with mules as the exception. Everyone gets access to the same amount of minerals. Everyone's units have the same, essentially, AI. Like, they'll all attack in the same way. They'll prioritize units in a similar way. So there's not like, you could, much to the dismay of content creators, there's only so many tier lists you can do. Because in Brood War, it was even less units. Like, you can learn all the relevant units in StarCraft in 5 minutes. Especially since some of them are pretty obvious. Those dudes with the guns? Yeah. The other dudes with the suits? They have even bigger guns. They stand next to them. They both do drugs together. No, not these dudes. Okay. Well, yes, actually those dudes as well. Everybody... I don't... But, no. But, so it is... You can kind of get the... If you're focused on it, you can learn StarCraft. You can learn on paper what everything is in a day. There is no way. If you you could, if I offered you $1,000 to name every unit that Terran has in 10 minutes or less, and I gave you an hour to study, you could do it. You think if I offered you $1,000, you could name 50 champions of League of Legends and their abilities in an hour? Assuming you've never played League. The problem is everybody has, which is a weird conundrum. But just imagine you've never played. 50, and that's like a third of them. I don't know how many there are. So, I just do want to point that out. That's the best and worst part of StarCraft, is there's very little barrier. That you and Serral start with the same amount of drones. You and Maru start with the same amount of SCVs. You and Zest start with the same amount of probes, though his is already on the map. It's after that point that things go wrong. But it's a simple game. But that's part of what makes it so difficult. I don't know what the question I was answering was, but that sounded profound, didn't it? Made sense. Who's your favorite pro to cast? Zest. Like, because he's actually a pro. Haz is fun, but like, Haz is like drinking to stop your hangover. Technically works, but at some point that's gonna, it's too much. I gotta... Zest. Well, I guess it's a direct parallel. It's just drinking every night. That's much more healthy. But waking up in the morning, pretending you don't feel like shit. Yes, good parallel.
Oh, a follower.
I don't like Maru or Serral for casting.
Sugar Shark
Very much.
666 is chilling for 4 months.
Too good. They're too good. Those players who are not as, like... That's why players like Scarlett, like Max Pax, Cure, because sometimes, like, they might fuck it up. They might. And that can make it interesting sometimes. Thank you, Sugar Shark. Alright. So, I'll leave you with this. Remember, respect your larva. Don't worry so much about your ovies. And quit being so creepy before maxing out. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, specifically for Zerg, because you couldn't watch at the vampire hours, I'll be collecting those for the next episode as we go into the Silver League. And I hope this made your day and your games a little bit better. Thank you for watching. Good luck, have fun. I'll see you next time. Stay chill.